Sound check, 1, 2, 3. Sound check, 1, 2, 3.
Good afternoon to the Public Works Committee. We have quorum, and we have Councillor Jackson, we have Councillor Kassar, Councillor Francis, Councillor Maureen Wilson, Councillor Beatty, and Councillor Tatterson. And on the web, we have Councillor Kretsch, and we have Councillor Alex Wilson. Thank you. I'd like to call this Public Works meeting to order, April 7th, 2025. As we have quorum present today, I would like to call this meeting to order. A reminder that all electronic devices are to be switched to a non-audible function during the committee meetings. Before we start this meeting, in light of the tragic event of one of our city employees, I would like to ask Carly Kahn, the General Manager of Public Works, to say a few words and to express our deepest condolences to the family, friends, and colleagues of Nabil El Aman. Please, GM.
Good afternoon, Chair and members of Public Works Committee. Last Friday at approximately 10:30 a.m., I received devastating news. A tragic incident occurred on Golf Links Road in Ancaster involving two of our Public Works employees who were out there performing road works. It is with a very heavy heart that I share we lost one of our own. Another colleague was seriously injured, and they thankfully over the weekend have been discharged from the hospital. He's in stable condition. This is an unimaginable loss for our department, but even more so for the families, friends, and loved ones of all involved. While we are grieving as a team, our sorrow cannot compare to the pain the families are enduring. Our hearts go out to them. Friday was an incredibly difficult day for the Public Works Department, for the City of Hamilton, and for all of us who work here. The Mayor, members of Council, senior leadership, and staff across the various departments expressed their deep shock and profound sorrow. Messages of support and condolences have poured in from fellow municipalities and public works leaders across the province. I would like to thank Hamilton Police Services, Fire and Ambulance, along with members of our Transportation Division who responded to the incident. They responded quickly and professionally and kept the city leadership informed as appropriate. As I deliver this message, City Manager Clucky, Director Ryle, and many others are at the at the Janazan participating in prayer. This tragedy will leave a lasting mark on our organization and will be felt for days, weeks, months to come. To everyone in our community, I ask you, please take a moment to reflect. Be vigilant, be safe, and when you see our crews out there, be aware of them. Give them the space, show them the patience and care they deserve. They are out there serving this city every day, and they deserve to come home. On behalf of the City of Hamilton, the senior leadership team, and the entire Public Works Department, I extend our deepest condolences to the families, friends, and fellow colleagues affected by this tragic incident. We are grieving with you, and we will carry this loss for a long time. Thank you.
Thank you, GM Carly. It is true, the saying that says when one part of the body hurts, the whole body hurts. So our condolences, and we will think and pray for the family. Thank you. Welcome, Councillor Spirafora and Councillor Ted McMeekin and Councillor Nan. Okay, may I have approval of the agenda, please? Can I have a mover and a second? Councillor Jackson, Councillor Sparafora. Is there any discussion to the agenda? I don't see anyone. Show of hands, please. Is there any declaration of interest? Mine's not a declaration of interest, but at 3 o'clock, I have a very important meeting I have to attend. So Vice Chair Matt Francis will take over the chair. So I appreciate that and thank you. I don't see anyone. We'll move on to approval of the minutes of previous meeting. 5.1, March 17, 2025. We have a mover and a seconder to adopt the previous meeting. Councillor Beattie, Councillor Taddison, thank you. Is there any discussion? I don't see any, so show of hands, please. Thank you. Councillor Kretsch, great. Okay, delegation. Before we begin our delegation for today, members are reminded that the questions of the delegations are for clarification purpose only, not for debate. A note to our delegate. You have 5 minutes to complete and for your delegation. You will hear a tone after 4 minutes, and then you will have an additional 1 minute to finish up. We will all hear all the delegate, and then we vote. So we'll vote all together. 6.1, delegation. We have James Kemp virtually.
Hello.
Hello, you have 5 minutes and you've spoken before, but this is, go ahead.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, Madam Chairperson and members of the Public Works Committee. Thank you for taking the time to hear from me today. I'm here to speak regarding HSR Fair Policy Report PW 23024C. In reading the report, I am struck by the assumptions being made here to interpret the results of the program in a positive way. Firstly is the assumption that because people express gratitude for saving a little money, that the program is hitting the mark. This is only speaking to those that paid full price beforehand. Where is the communication with those on the half-price bus pass in comparison? Has the HSR reached out to the CNIB card holders, people using walkers or rollators, or other mobility device users that have registered for Fare Assist? What are their thoughts on it? If staff is to give a real assessment at the 1-year mark, it should have a little more involved than some people express gratitude at saving money. Another thing missing from the 1-year assessment is the DARTS rider experience. If we were to give a true assessment, should we not assess the other half of the equation? This is where I expected to see the highest approval, as I had no savings program before. As some of you are aware, I've been advocating against this program being implemented in its current form since it was proposed. I've raised realistic fears that people would no longer be able to afford the bus or find navigating the new boarding policies too cumbersome. I did my own calculations based on information given to the public by various agencies and estimated between 1,500 and 2,000 people would be unable to use the bus for whatever reason due to the changes in fare and boarding policies. In discussions about the Fare Assist program at council and committee meetings, I have heard staff say that there will be a painful period as users adjust to the higher costs or manage the new policies. But that is an assumption made by people that do not have disabilities or live in crushing poverty. I say this not as a judgment of city staff, merely a statement of fact. What will happen in reality is that people will not use the bus. They won't go to social programs. They won't volunteer. They won't go to their preferred grocery stores and buy healthy food. Instead, their world will get smaller. They will do less. They will stay in their area. They will shop at less healthy places like Dollarama because that is what they can reach. People are suffering because of these choices. This is not imagined or exaggerated for effect. It is fact. I myself have had serious issues using the HSR with the new policies, and while I've received an accommodation for them, I'm still waiting for some sort of card or small sign to let the driver know I need assistance before they stop. My usage has been cut by 90% since the program began. This report is positing that 2,783 people that are registered but not using the program is due to the fact that they have vehicles. This is an assumption based on only partial information. Some of them may have vehicles, but there are other reasons too. For example, my family is registered, but my son is going to Mohawk and uses their bus pass for 9 months of the year. I would further posit that a large number of them fall into my category of 1,500 to 2,000 people that simply can't afford it or find the service too onerous to use with the current policy. I must also take issue with the HSR's assertion that social assistance programs will take care of people that cannot afford the service. What evidence is there of this? How many bus tickets can a person receive? What hoops do they have to jump through to get the tickets? Is the cost deducted from their assistance? Then there is the question of the HSR passing off their costs to social assistance. Isn't that just robbing Peter to pay Paul, as Hamilton provides funding for both? I've been asked to be patient as this pilot program is enacted, but this report is only confirming my concerns as warranted. As the second year of the program begins, I must again point out that this has real-world consequences for persons with disabilities, and I will continue to speak for them at every opportunity. Thank you for your time and attention.
Thank you, James. And is there any question from the committee? I don't see any. Thank you. We're going to move on. Carl Andrews, Hamilton Community Benefit Network, and he's also speaking on the HSR fair policies from the... Carl, you've been here many times, so this is great. It's wonderful. You know the rule here. Got 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I apologize for the mask. I've got pneumonia, so I did not want to share it with any of you. Thank you, councillors and staff, for hearing my delegation today. I want to take my limited time to flag the HSR report on Fair Assist program for you. As many of you know, it was meant to replace many existing programs, including free transport for those with visible disabilities. The report, I feel, does not paint a picture of success. It has downloaded over 660K of operational costs to our social service agencies in bus tickets and added transportation costs. It has seen a net reduction in access for those most marginalized in our society and created a means-tested program that is difficult to access and requires complex paperwork, tax filings to access. I believe this report should be sent down to the Accessibility Committee for Persons with Disability, and staff should be directed to work with that committee and the disability servicing organizations of this city to find a more fulsome and better way to service our most marginalized communities. Despite broader considerations for inclusion, the report shows this program only services 2,783 folks. Many community residents find applying for the Fair Assist program complicated versus the previous practice of letting those with visible disabilities just walk on at the driver's discretion. Previously, the program granted those on OW and ODSP a 50% reduction in the cost of fare, but that number has shrunk. I think that the city can do better and accommodate those with the most needs, especially our seniors and disabled folks who choose to take transit, which I will remind you is cheaper than darts, for their transportation needs. I would encourage this committee to send the report back and work with the ACPD committee to develop a program that services more of those in need in our city. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Carl. And I wonder if there's anyone from the committee that would like to ask questions. I don't see any, so thank you. Okay. Councillor Alex Wilson, please, virtually.
Thank you. Through you, Chair, just a clarification question. Delegate Andrus, you said a 660 number. I see that one also in the report. Can you just tell me what your understanding of that number was, or just restate that piece? I just missed it.
Yeah, absolutely. So the report quite boldly proclaims that number as additional revenue that has been created due to the changes in the Fair Assist policies, and boldly states that as new income, and then goes on to list the number of increases in bus tickets for social service agencies that that number directly relates to. So it's basically a net downloading of additional costs to social service agencies that the city may fund in part or otherwise. But it's quite clear in the report, even after the 288 subsidy, that $660,000 in revenue, with a subsidy cost of $288,000. Additional fare revenue came from social service agency purchasing and distributing transit tickets, with a 29.6% increase in ticket redemptions compared to 2023.
Councillor?
No, thank you. I appreciate understanding the point you are making with those numbers. Thank you. I'll follow up with staff at the appropriate time, Chair.
Okay, Councillor Kassar, please.
Thank you, Chair Pauls. Thank you for the delegation. I'd like your opinion, following your presentation. What is success? How would we measure success? What would the criteria be? Do you have any input on that? Because it's something that I've been trying to get my head around. Thank you.
Yeah, no, I appreciate the question. Thank you very much, Councillor. I think success would be measured in comparing the way and asking the folks who used to use these different varying programs that the city provided to this program directly. Right now we have no metrics. I can tell you as a person who uses the bus all of the time, I remember folks with walkers or wheelchairs just walking on without paying, or folks who were using a blind cane or something with no challenges. So are we reaching out to those folks to find out how their experience has changed with the new Fare Assist program? I have heard from my partner who works in the social services spaces at Low Barrier Shelters about an increase in uptake in bus tickets. So is this program servicing our most marginalized folks, and how are we counting them? How are we asking those questions? And I don't feel this report does justice to that.
Councillor?
Yeah, great. Thank you. That's very helpful. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Councillor McMeekin, please.
Deputy Mayor, couple follow-ups. One follow-up to Councillor Cassar's indication of success. It seems to me that in reviewing the report or in talking to folk with concerns that there are just under 6,000 people who routinely in one form or another use the system. But I understand that there are about 80,000 Hamiltonians who would meet the eligibility requirements. Why is it that so few people, in your opinion, are accessing public transit?
Yeah, so part of it is just the means-challenged nature of the way the program is being rolled out. So folks have to have previously filed their income tax the year before to be able to allocate if they're under the low poverty income measure. Right. So that's a challenge right there. That requires a whole bunch of bureaucracy just to begin with. And then, of course, they have to apply to the program, provide the proof. They have to have ID. Like, there's a whole bunch of challenges that come up for folks just in accessing the program itself, versus how the program for some folks used to work, is they would just walk on the bus. Look at me, I've got my cane or my walker, and I was allowed on the bus with no questions asked. So that change in the way that some of the testing is done for this program has been challenging, I think, for some folks, especially folks with disabilities.
Okay, thanks. My supplemental question, I think you quoted a figure, the contributions of various local charities to support the program. What was that figure again?
660,000 is in the staff report of increase about almost 30% in bus ticket usage by social service agencies. So that's a direct cost that they are paying for people who may not have accessed those services before in 2023.
So I guess, my knee-jerk reaction to that is that's probably money they could invest providing the services that they were created to provide.
It could be. It's also, though, a net revenue generator for the HSR. So it's up to you as council to decide where your values are and which one you think is more valuable.
Carl, I get it. Thanks very much.
Thank you. And I don't see anyone else, so thank you, Carl, for coming and for sharing. Thank you. Brad Envoy, Disability Justice Network of Ontario. And it'll be virtually.
Thank you so much, Councillor. Like the others so far, I'm here to speak about the broader Fare Assist program and the report before you here at Public Works. I guess the way I want to start this off is to first, like others have said, there are 2,783 people who've gotten through various barriers. They've been approved for Fare Assist, and then actually were able to register and load their card and then use the program. Now, I think that, as others have noted, the fact that the main positive point in this report is revenue is deeply concerning when this is a program that was fundamentally designed, supposedly, to ensure that folks who are living in poverty, who need access to further services, are able to access them. Fundamentally, the cost of the overall program really has been put on the backs of disabled and low-income users and transit users and social service agencies, as we've already heard. Moreover, if we think about even from 2020, so around the time of the last census, 11% of Hamiltonians were below the low-income measure after tax kind of poverty line calculation, which is close to what this project uses to calculate its numbers. 11% of the population. And this was in better times, when some income supports for COVID-19 were still flowing, and before the last 5 years of economic instability and other increasing measures of poverty around the city and province have been occurring. In a time when, we are faced with tariffs, when we're faced with broader economic instability, we can't leave behind low-income and disabled populations. Moreover, 27% of Canadians, within the broader space, have a disability, and that, many folks within that number, 40% nationally, live at or below the poverty line. When we look at those numbers, I think folks rightly mentioned that 80,000 were expected to possibly be eligible for this program, and that is certainly true. Further, in consultations that we've all had with community, many users are talking about being punished for being poor, and that this is an extension of legislated poverty throughout various parts of our social assistance system. Ultimately, even folks who are able to access these programs theoretically are stating that the discount is still too low, that costs are still too high for those who are on social assistance programs. Ultimately, residents are choosing between food, shelter, and transit, even for those with mobility issues. And transit is often being chosen last, even when this causes other health issues. For example, when we had one town hall on the matter, it was spoken about that a homeless individual with an amputated leg was who uses a walker and has no fixed address, can't apply for some other programs or has barriers and difficulty accessing these areas, and instead is walking around the city to get where they need to go instead of using transit. And that many folks have reported this to be true, that folks, instead of using transit, while this report, posits that maybe it's because they have alternate modes of transit, some folks are instead having to walk, having to not go to appointments, are creating other problems for them in their lives. And, even folks who've acknowledged that, they've been able to fill out paperwork and move through these systems, that some of the program was still confusing, that even with some outreach and pathways of support, there was lack of clarity, and that overall barriers like the need for an income tax statement creates other barriers for folks, as has been spoken about a little bit earlier. My hope as well would be that this report is referred to the Accessibility Committee for Persons with Disabilities, and that further conversation can be had about this program across the community. If this pilot truly is only serving just under 3,000 people, it isn't reaching the goal that this council set out when you all sat down and said that you wanted to move forward with this project. The explicit purpose, when we heard from others, was that some people were being excluded from the previous programs that existed before Fair Assist, that this was meant to fix those gaps. But instead, more people are being left behind. All right. Thank you all very much for your time.
Thank you, Brad, for your delegation. And I do not see anyone on the list. So thank you for delegating. We're going to move on for 6.2, delegations respecting item 9.2, and it's the Lincoln M. Alexandra Parkway and the Red Hill Valley Parkway. Mobility Feasibility Study. We have Gabriela Calopos, Clean Air Partnership, virtually.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, members of City of Hamilton Public Works Committee and staff and community residents for allowing me time on the agenda. My name is Gabby Cullipush and I serve as the Executive Director for the Clean Air Partnership, which is an environmental charity that works with municipalities and their various partners to help them increase the ambition and implementation of their climate actions. I'm going to apologize in advance for my deputation because I believe what I am about to say will annoy you at some point in the next 5 minutes. And I believe this because what I'm about to share annoys me too. It is frustrating when real-world experience and results contradicts what we think of a logical thinking process, because one would think that widening a road would have an impact on addressing congestion. More roads equals more traffic that you could kind of have. That should be the case. But sadly, we have decades of evidence that highway widening is just not an effective solution for reducing traffic congestion and greenhouse gas emissions. This is annoying because it would seem logical that if you build more lanes, you reduce traffic. But that hypothesis ignores the reality of the unintended consequences associated with highway widening called induced demand. And induced demand is what happens when increased roadway capacity leads to a proportional increase in traffic volume. This results from the reality that when you build new lanes, the initial reduction in traffic that makes driving more attractive, prompting individuals to take more trips, increase their reliance on the single occupancy vehicle to be their transportation option over public transit, e-mobility, or other active transportation options. It's simply the sad reality that highway widening increases the reliance on the use of single occupancy vehicles as people's transportation choice. This results in increasing the use of highways and sadly results in ever increasing congestion over time. I told you, it's annoying. We can take Houston as a case study. Houston, if there ever was a community that had used highway solutions to try and address their congestion issues. After they did an expansion in 2011, which widened the freeway to 23 lanes, and it cost well over $3 billion, which honestly sounds like a steal at this point in time. Congestion decreased initially. However, within a few years, travel times peaked during the morning hours, increased by 30%, and then increased 55% in the evening compared to pre-expansion levels. This case underscores the counterproductive nature of highway widening in mitigating congestion. In Canada, similar patterns have been observed. And we know that research has shown us that not only does it just result in increasing demand on the highway system, thereby lowering your chances for being able to address traffic congestion, it also tends to increase the amount of vehicle kilometers traveled, which directly correlates with higher emissions. And a study by the Victoria Transport Policy Institute found that expanding congestion road attracts latent demand, thereby increasing traffic and then increasing the proportion that is going for new capacity on that. Given the evidence, it's prudent to consider alternative strategies that can actually address congestion and emissions more effectively and more cost effectively. Investing in public transit infrastructure, promoting active transportation modes like e-mobility and cycling and walking, and implementing demand management measures such as carpool lanes have shown that they actually do have an impact on reducing traffic volumes and emissions. If we truly want to address our traffic congestion and greenhouse gas emissions from our travel choices, we just have to inevitably increase people's options for moving to and from their destinations. Those are the investments we really need to be making to truly address congestion and greenhouse gas emissions. We can't just be throwing everything into the solution on single occupancy vehicles and thinking we can widen to the point where we actually solve our congestion issues. It just doesn't work. And it's a very expensive solution that is giving you only a temporary reprieve from what is going to be further congestion issues over time. Therefore, I urge the City of Hamilton to consider greater investments in public transit, e-mobility, active transportation that can actually truly provide people with more transportation options and create a more efficient, equitable, and environmentally friendly transportation system for our community. And I'd be happy to answer any questions that people have.
Thank you, Gabriela. And I think we do have a speakers list. Councillor Francis, please.
Thank you, Chair Pauls. Just a question to the delegate. Have you driven up the Red Hill southbound during peak hours?
I have, yeah. I live in Hamilton. I live in the north end, but I have been found myself on the Red Hill Valley.
Thank you. And could you tell me where exactly, during those peak hours when there's all this congestion on the Red Hill, where exactly does the congestion ease up on the Red Hill, through your chair?
Well, I think one of the main issues is that when you only have one option for people to use to get to and from their different location, they will be using their single occupancy vehicle. If we actually had it where we dedicated a lane to that, where they could carpool, where we dedicated a lane for public transit to use that, I think there's an opportunity for making other choices a more reasonable way. But if you're going to have a densely populated community like Hamilton, like the Greater Golden Horseshoe, we just can't, like math doesn't lie, you can't be moving 8.3 million people around in single occupancy vehicle and think that you're not going to have congestion. We really do have to increase people's transportation options outside of just dedicating all of our solutions to helping people move around in single occupancy vehicles. It's just, you can't build away from the traffic congestion when everybody's relying on a single occupancy vehicle. I wish it wasn't the case, but we have decades of evidence that that is the case.
Thank you, Councillor.
Yeah, thank you. Some great points there. What I wanted to flesh out here was on the Red Hill southbound during peak congestion hours, where it actually starts to ease up is after Green Hill Avenue. It eases right up. It's backed up all the way from the QEW to Green Hill. When you hit Green Hill, it eases up. And why is that? That's because it opens up to 3 lanes there. I'm not sure if you're aware of that, but where it opens to 3 lanes, traffic starts flowing significantly. So just wanted to flesh that out for you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. There's no one else on the speakers list, so we will, Councillor B, there's nobody. Oh, okay, Councillor Wilson.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. No, my apologies. I didn't, I was going to indicate and then saw my hand first, so thank you. I just wanted to ask the speaker, the delegate, beg your pardon. I'm trusting the delegate has a pan-Ontario or perhaps North American view of things. And they acknowledged some of the frustration that comes with the message. If she could share whether what other communities might be doing within that we might be familiar with to deal with congestion. Thank you, through the chair.
Well, I think, oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
Through the chair, thank you very much. I think one of the key things that we could look at Europe as the example on this one. I think where it comes down to the reality is when you have people so densely populated together and they need to be able to move to and from, you just have to give them more transportation options. We've put a lot of our investments into the road system that is geared towards helping people in single occupancy vehicles move around to and from. And I'm not saying that solution hasn't worked for a number of years. I just don't see it working, and the evidence has shown that it doesn't work as a solution over the long term. We have to give people more options. So whether it be investing in public transit that gives that kind of opportunity for people to moving around, giving those dedicated lanes to dedicated transit routes, so transit becomes a more attractive option for people over sitting in traffic, and providing opportunities for dedicated and safe places for them to get to and from, and either using e-mobility, active transportation if it's a short trip. Like, we definitely can reduce people's using single occupancy vehicles. I'm not saying that this is going to solve the problem of not needing single occupancy vehicles. That's just an option for as many people as they need it when there are no other options. But I think if we invested in giving people more options on public transit and dedicated lanes for public transit, making it faster to use public transit, making it safe and easy to use active transportation, there's a certain percentage of the single occupancy vehicles on the Red Hill Valley that we could probably take off there, making more room for other people who can't come out of their single occupancy vehicle because where they're going to and from doesn't have other options available to them. So I think that's really one of the key critical things that we've learned from all the other cities, really truly trying to address their congestion issues. Give people more transportation options, remove people from single occupancy vehicles, the ones you can, and then make more room for others. that they can use it without kind of thinking that we can widen in a way that will solve our congestion issues over the long term. We'll get immediate reprieve. We'll get a couple of years at most reprieve from it, but it just gets worse after that, after that time period. And it's not cheap to expand highway systems. So when you're really thinking about limited funds, how do you actually truly decide where your best options are to invest the money to serve as many people as possible? I told you it was an annoying conversation. I knew it was going to be annoying because it is frustrating that what you think would solve it doesn't actually solve it in reality.
Thank you. Councillor Wilson.
Thanks. I did want to just speak to the issue that was raised, and I know sometimes North Americans always bristle when European examples are used, but I always think of transportation planning and land use planning as like peas and carrots. One informs and affects the other. And how would you respond to, I mean, the density of Europe is typically in urban areas is significantly greater, which would perhaps make for a more attractive and convenient use of modes of transportation other than single occupancy vehicles. Thanks.
Gabriela? Do you want?
Oh, sorry, I didn't. Okay, yeah, no, I agree that there is different land. Urban form plays a huge role in the viability of transit and active transportation. But even in our North American case, we found that you can get about half of the, 50% of people's routes are within 1 to 5 kilometers. As such, there is a significant percentage of people we can take out of single occupancy vehicles if we provided them with safe places to use either active transportation or made a public transit a more convenient and quicker version. The one thing that we have in North America that I think we don't have in Europe in the same extent is wider roads that give us a little bit more options for giving people more options. But in reality, if we looked at our road space and how much of it is dedicated to helping people with single occupancy vehicles over other forms of transportation, it's like it really does become brutally obvious that we have invested a lot more of our eggs in the single occupancy vehicle solution over other forms of transportation. And I think that part of this longer term solution means we're going to have to be more equitable in the road space allocations that we provide if we truly want to have people have different options to get to and from.
Thank you. Councillor Wilson? Okay. All right. Councillor Beattie, please.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to the delegate for being here today. I know a little bit about the theory of induced demand. I'm kind of a person that likes to think that he keeps up on some of these transportation theories. I have a question just though in terms of if I could distill down the nature of the presentation that the delegation that you've made here today. Is it basically a suggestion that any investment in the expansion of these highways would be better served by the City of Hamilton refocusing those investments in different areas? Or, because I know that you were speaking in a lot of broader, more interregional policy issues, perhaps provincial issues, are you maybe less specifically on the concept of what we're doing here in Hamilton, or are you more specifically leaning into we have a broader problem with getting people from point A to point B and not a lot of options? I'm wondering if you could just highlight which direction specifically are you trying to bring our attention to here?
Thank you very much. Through the chair, both, sadly. Our communities are what build our province in the end. There's overall transportation planning. If we looked at the 401, we look at Highway 14 proposed on that one, which is meant to kind of thinking that it'll solve problems in terms of high traffic on 401. And it probably will work for a couple of years, but then that kind of gains that we made over that benefit was meaning that we're going to increase more transportation congestion after those kind of after the induced demand has been brought onto the roads. So like even the best studies that I've seen on it has shown that you get the widening solution solves it for about 6 years. And then you lose that as a result of the induced demand that gets created. So I'd say that it's about both of our kind of how we create our communities, the mixed uses of our communities. So it could mean something like, let's say you looked at it kind of like Rymel Road. I mean, there is no other option on Rymel Road outside of a single or a vehicle use. There's no safe places for active transportation. There's no dedicated lanes for for public transit. When you create those types of dedicated lanes for public transit and persons stuck in traffic and they see the public transit is moving along when they're not, that induces a demand for them to think about using public transit on their next trip. And that's where we start making the behavioral switches. But with behavioral switches won't happen until we give them a better option for how to get to and from. So when we make active transportation, when we make e-mobility, when we make public transit a more convenient choice over the vehicle, people will make that choice over the long term. But it's not something that gets solved in overnight. That's absolutely true. But it's also not something that gets solved by widening highways either.
Thank you.
Thank you for the answer. A follow-up question then, based on, I think that you've kind of teased out that some of your speaking here today involves how the Hamilton or City of Hamilton would invest in our transportation network locally. And I guess where some of the conversation and the theory falls apart a little bit for me is that my understanding in my community and communities all across Hamilton, Glanbrook, Binbrook, Upper Stony Creek, the mountain, is that a large number of people are commuting out of the city to other places. And I even use the example, one of my children had to get a co-op placement at a specialized engineering firm in Burlington. We live in Winona. There is no transit option to go from one city to the other. And a lot of people have the same issue if they're commuting up and down the Red Hill to go to Burlington, Halton, Oakville, anywhere in the GTA, and they live in Binbrook, there is but one option. And so I'm just trying to understand that if the city is going to invest in a particular strategy to help move people from point A to point B, a lot of it is really outside our jurisdiction because a lot of it takes place outside our city. So if we're going to make an investment in a system that may not be perfect, I don't see how we can impact those types of trips that are beyond our city limits. I just don't know if you have any feedback on that.
Transportation is a big endeavor on this one, and it's not going to be solved by just one solution. I do not think there's, like, this is a buckshot kind of solutions that we got to be thinking at rather than a silver bullet. I would say that probably one of the key critical aspects of this is hooking up the Hamilton system to other larger regional systems. So if that was the case, to have Hamilton public transit for somewhere in Binbrook, Binbrook would have to go downtown Hamilton and then down Hamilton to get to some place in the GO train station on that one. So that's a very kind of cumbersome, like anytime you have more than one switch a person has to do in their public transit route, you're going to get them choosing their vehicle because of the hassles in those connections. So I would definitely say, probably kind of thinking about it from that Binbrook perspective, that you would probably need to have something directly from Binbrook right down to, let's say, either Burlington Station so that they can get right into the Lakeshore West kind of route, and then the regional system can take over from that. If the hospital or the place you have to go to is not on a public transit, then chances are you're probably going to have to choose your vehicle to be able to get people to that location. And I'm not saying that public transit, active transportation, and e-mobility is a solution for everyone. I just think that, and we have evidence that when you start building safe places for them, you're going to take a certain percentage of vehicles that are on the highways and roads right now and move them over to other modes of transportation. But that movement of people who are going to different locations where there are other transportation options that can get them there aren't going to be actually getting off the roads or getting off their single occupancy vehicle until those options are available to them. So I would say certainly from the thing of we have this issue, like same thing when you're anywhere in the GTHA, trying to get to downtown Toronto is relatively easy. But if you want to go to Markham to Vaughan, that's a hell of a trip for you to make. So I think that's where we have to kind of think about the regional transportation system and how our cities can connect people up to other regional bodies. And that would, I think, would be the thing. Like Binbrook should be able to access the GO station with one trip. That would be a solution that I think would give people in the Binbrook area a little bit more options to get to and from without relying always on the vehicle if they're going to a location that does have those public transit options available to them in the location that they're going.
Thank you for that detailed answer, and I unfairly used the community of Binbrook as the reference point. My apologies to the Ward 11 councillor.
No, it's all good. I just know that there's not a lot of public transit
Binbrook is at the top of the Red Hill. That's why geographically, that's what came to mind. Just my last question through the chair. Is there ever a point at which we get to where we go, you know what, there's really no other option. We've maxed out the capacity on this street. We have nothing else that we can do but add a lane. Do we ever reach that threshold according to some of the theories that you're discussing?
I think that there is that would be a choice once other options have been tried and found to be still not able to remove enough vehicles from the highway in order to relieve some of the congestion there. But at present, we haven't tried other options outside of just the highway widening on that one. We haven't really kind of understood where are the public transportation kind of routes that can enable people to get off the Red Hill or the link that would reduce the vehicle traffic by, let's say, 20%, which would probably be the same thing that you would probably get from a widening for a short period of time as well, without creating the induced demand that unfortunately highway widening ends up resulting in.
Okay, thank you for the answer. Thank you, Chair. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Councillor. And thank you again, Gabriela, for
Thank you very much. Thank you so much.
Okay. Next, we have Ian Borsk, Environment Hamilton, and it'll be virtual. And Ian, you've been here, see, virtually? He's not here? Okay. So, should we move on or, okay. Okay, may I have a move and a second to receive the delegations? Councillor Wang and Councillor Beatty, thank you. Show of hands, please. Councillor Cratch, up. Okay, thank you. All right. Item 7. May I please have a move and a second to put the following item on the information on the floor. 7.1, Hamilton HSR fare policies. Is there any first mover and a seconder? Councillor Wang, Councillor Jackson, thank you. Is there any discussions on the item? I don't see any. Joe, there's nobody on the list. Okay, Councillor Kassar, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Pauls. A couple of questions. Just want to ask staff about the comment that was made during one of the delegations around this, I think it was $660,000 that was being downloaded to social service agencies. I think the numbers are maybe not entirely clear, so we'd just like some help for the public to understand what actually, to respond to that and maybe explain further what that $660,000 is. Thank you.
Director?
Thank you. Maureen Cousin-Heath, Director of Transit, through the Chair. Thank you for the question, Councillor Kassar. I want to be clear to make sure that we're understanding the numbers correctly. When we're looking at page 2 of the report, there is an annotation of $660,000, which was revenue received in the fare box from people availing of the Fare Assist program, subsidy level of $288,000 in that usage. What we then saw was our social service agencies in Hamilton were able to provide many more tickets to their clients than they had in the past. We did see an increase, and that totaled a 29.6% increase over 2023, giving out over 70,000 tickets. Those two numbers are not connected.
Councillor?
Okay, so just to ask clearly then, social service agencies are not having to pay that money for tickets.
They buy special tickets at a special discounted rate from HSR, and they receive funding from various sources via other levels of government or private donations, et cetera, in order to purchase those tickets.
Okay, okay. So they do, but it's not entirely black and white. Okay. That's good for that. Secondly, so the subsidy of $288,000 that the city has provided, can you remind us what the budget was in 2025 or for the pilot? I just want to understand how much money that we've budgeted is being used versus is not being used. And then where does that money go for not using it?
I don't have those numbers at the ready, but I'm going to see if Manager Nancy Purser does. I believe that she is online and would be able to answer that question.
Good afternoon, Chair, members of council, Nancy Purser, Manager Transit Support Services. The FARASYS program for the pilot term, which was January 1 to 2024 to June 30th, 2026, was just over $3 million in total, at approximately just over $1 million per year. Part of that is also staffing costs that are required for the program. So at this point, it was being funded from our reserve. And because it hasn't been fully utilized, it's just staying in the reserve at this time.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Chair. That's helpful to know. Also wanted to change gears a little bit and ask the question around, it was kind of prompted by our delegates, and I asked one of them a question, what does success look like? I mean, what problem are we trying to solve? I know, yes, we have a FARASYS program, and there was reasons that the previous couple of iterations that have been there a long time weren't working. But if we zoom out from that, through transit programs for those who don't have as much means as others, what are we trying to solve? What is the goal here? Through you, Chair Pauls.
Through the chair. When we think back to why FARASYS was implemented in approximately a year and a half ago, the intent was to develop a program that could be means tested and consistently applied to people who we knew had low incomes. So like many other transit agencies and municipalities across Ontario, we use the low income measure as a benchmark in which to apply for the discount so that it was consistent and could be easily managed from a programmatic standpoint in a way that did not involve bus drivers making judgment calls on the doorstep. It didn't give a discount to people with visible disabilities and exclude persons with invisible disabilities. It was not likely to be something that could potentially be taken advantage of out on the roads. So those were the goals. There were many goals in the original iteration, and it was to address the interest in the community to have an affordable fare discount. So in many ways, we have achieved the goals that the program originally set out to achieve.
Thank you. Councillor, question?
Yeah, just one quick follow-up. I was, I guess, a little disappointed in the uptake that was shared in the report. I missed the mark by, I think, a long shot. I think that we need to potentially, as we're evaluating the pilot, reframe what we're trying to achieve. My personal opinion, I'll state now, and I'm certainly welcome to input and adjusting that over time, but I think what we're trying to achieve is affordable mobility, to enable residents who don't have other good options or affordable options to get around the city for work errands, leisure, what have you. And I think that the pilot, I think, is not achieving that successfully now. So we're going to need to do better. I don't know exactly what that is, but that's kind of the impression I'm left with at the moment.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Alex Wilson, please.
Thank you. Through you, Chair, just trying to get a better understanding of some of the numbers in the report, just generally speaking. And so one of the numbers is with respect to the assumed trips. Am I outside of kind of register? Is it fair to read? I'm seeing that there's about a sixth as many trips. We got 400,000 trips and we expected 3-ish million something. So about a sixth of those trips. And are there two reasons for that? One, fewer people registered. There's been a lot of conversation about that. I understand it. And then also the people who did registered are taking fewer trips than we anticipated. Are those the kind of two main reasons between the assumption and the result? Is there anything I'm missing?
Director?
Through the chair. No, I believe you've interpreted it correctly. I don't think there's anything you're missing. Fewer people have registered for the program than we anticipated, and the registrants are taking fewer trips than we expected. What we're also seeing is while entire households may be registering, not everyone in the household is actively using transit, and we did sort of basic math that assumed everybody who applied would use it.
Thank you, Director. Councillor?
Thank you. On the tickets, again, just trying to understand numbers here. I think there was a 23% increase. Do we know, I'm so fine with a rounded number, but just roughly how many more people use tickets from social service agencies to kind of the nearest 1,000 or so than they did in the previous year? Or if that's plain in the report and I missed it, my apologies. I just wasn't able to kind of get that sense of what is the impact of more tickets being used?
Director.
Through the chair, we do not have numbers because we don't receive that information from the social service agencies. What we know is our next step for more community outreach will be to the social service agencies to see how we can better support them, what information they could share from us, and what it would be helpful for us to do to assist them with their program.
Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you. Okay, so we know there was about 20-ish thousand, maybe I'm wrong, but like that 72 number divide by whatever 23% of the 72 number that was in the report. But those are trips, those aren't people. And so 20-ish thousand trips on tickets, but might be different number for actual individuals. If someone makes a weekly trip on tickets, for example, that's going to be 50 of those or 50 plus. Okay, understanding that. Where are we going next? Are there forthcoming recommendations with where this program could grow, change, expand? It seems that some of the assumptions that went in weren't there. Is there a conversation about either, as some said, on the budget side of things, correcting the assumptions so the assumptions on the budget side match the results, keeping monitoring for a bit? Or is the idea that there might be additional funding or changes to the eligibility, either a broader eligibility, so more people getting assistance or potentially a deeper level of assistance? Or what's the kind of consideration of the program itself?
Through the chair, a final report regarding the status of the pilot is due back as part and parcel of the 2026 budget process. So we anticipate that that would include recommendations on where we go coming out of the pilot.
Thank you. Councillor, your last question?
Yeah, thank you. There's a conversation about how some of the feedback that's been heard with respect to Presto is some of the feedback the group is trying to take on or take in. Understanding Presto is not our system, is it maybe possible to hear through you, Chair, just a bit of an update as to, are we hoping that lands somewhere? Is that kind of, we're seeing where that can land? Just a little bit more about what we might be able to, where we hope to be with that in a year from now, or is it, we're still trying to figure out where we can be with that?
I heard that a report is coming, so
Yes, sorry, specific to the Presto piece, not the overall program.
Okay.
Through the chair, we've done some outreach with the Presto team at Metrolinx. We've made the connection between our ACPD and Metrolinx so that they can have a conversation about the functionality. I think as Presto goes through looking at future functionality and new releases of software and hardware, there may be additional enhancements made, but at this time, it's the status quo.
Thank you. And your time's up unless you want to go second time. No? Okay, thank you. We'll move on. Councillor Patterson, please.
Thank you, Chair. Through the chair, to the director. Just says, it says 6 focus groups, which from my understanding was 22 people in total formed these focus groups. Can you share how those focus groups were determined?
Director.
Through the chair. Yes, we have a customer panel at HSR, and people on our customer panel were invited to participate, and we also did direct outreach to recipients of the program. So anyone who enrolled and was using it was invited to participate in our focus group.
And so in total 22 people, so basically sometimes 3 people, sometimes 4 people, just small groups, okay, sharing their information. In another section of the report, it says, while many participants found the application process straightforward, others faced challenges, particularly with online application links, unclear income documentation, digital literacy, simplifying forms, offering clear instructions, and providing in-person support were recommended by the participants. What was the action taken by staff with that information?
Director.
Through the chair, we've made changes to our website and changes to instruction. We've gone out and done personal enrollment clinics at places like the library and at various community centers. People can go into the Hunter Street Go Station and receive personalized assistance. We've had outreach to emails where a customer service rep has called them and walked them through the process. And we've also made systematic changes to the application process in order to try to make it easier for people to adapt.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. One last question. Some of the delegates spoke to referring this back to the subcommittee for ACPD to give feedback. What engagement was done with ACPD prior to the Fair Assist, and do you think that there would be any value in referring it back to them now for this report to give us more insight going forward?
Director.
I believe ACPD was consulted in the original iteration of introducing Fair Assist, and part and parcel of the reason was the Fair Assist program also applies to both rides on conventional HSR transit and DARTS trips as well, which was one of the benefits I forgot to list off a few minutes ago when we were speaking. I do not believe that there's value in referring this back to the subcommittee at this point in time. We have heard from the delegations what their wishes are, and the pilot program is running. The feedback that we receive from the whole of the community is that we have work to do in terms of communication for more program adaptation. And I don't necessarily know that a different feedback channel will need to yield different results. They're welcome to participate in panels. They're welcome to participate in focus groups and whatnot. So I think we have that feedback channel available.
Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you very much, Director. And just sharing, I think, the lines of wonderings that Councillor Cassar was having is, as I think you know, I've been for a more fair assist that better recognizes all the challenges that people with disabilities face in paying for transit. Even with the reduced rate, I think some people are finding that 70% increase as opposed to the 30% rebate a challenge, and there is a gap there, and I would hope that as a city we would take that up as a challenge to try and overcome that and meet that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor McMeekin, please.
Yes, thanks, Deputy Mayor. I want to build on the remarks of Councillor Cassar and Councillor Taddison around success and of the pilot and the 2,783 people who use it out of a potential catchment group of about 80,000, I'm told. I should just point out, I want to say thanks to Councillor Taddison. He's seen as a political icon amongst the disability community for his ability to listen, to learn, and to advocate on their behalf. And I have had occasion to hang around with him and pick up some tidbits of what's going on. I too am concerned about how we get input. We had a big discussion here a couple of weeks ago about citizen input, stakeholder engagement. You may remember that. I get a little concerned when I hear that 22 people out of, 8,000, presumably, are engaged, and the comment that we don't know whether a referral to the ACPD directly would have any bearing. I don't think we'd know that until we gave it a try. So I guess my question is, has this specific report been shared with the engagement and stakeholder groups, and will it be specifically shared with the ACPD?
Yeah.
That's my question.
Is that a question, Director, please?
Thank you. Through the chair, I'm checking now to see if we sent the link to the chair of the ACPD. I believe we did. If we haven't, we will. And certainly it is a public report, and I do believe that they knew that this was coming.
So what have we heard from them?
Director?
Sorry, through the chair. Specific to this report or in general?
Specific to this report.
I do not believe I've received a specific response on this report.
That's my concern, Madam Chair. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Crutch, please.
Thank you. And through the chair, my question is really just, maybe it's more of a comment, but I think it is a question at first about when we talked a lot about in the initial stages of this, that we use the word replace a fair bit. And so replacing one thing with another, right? And so in doing that replacement, what we heard was there was a disproportionate impact for folks who have mobility challenges and disabilities. And so I guess what I'm looking at to understand in terms of future reporting is if we're going to hear about whether or not we're filling that gap as an organization effectively. Because I think what you're asking people to do is respond to the program in terms of satisfaction with the program itself. And we're asking people to evaluate the program itself. But I think there's another thing going on here. And I think we're all having conversations about that, and delegates are. So could you respond to that notion where we see disproportionate impacts for folks with disabilities? Are we having a report back upon, what the impact has been of canceling one program and replacing it with another, and where we are on that journey?
Director.
Through the chair. So because of the way that the temporary transit fare program worked, where people just boarded the bus and didn't pay a fare, we don't know who they are. So it's really hard to get feedback or input from them because it's hard to do outreach when you don't know who your former clients were. And similarly, on the persons who used to avail themselves of the Affordable Pass, they are included in the outreach that we've done in the program en masse and broadly. So when we talk about in this report, the focus group, remember the focus group is but one of the tools that we have used to do engagement on this for well over a year now. So there's quite a few different channels that people can use to provide us feedback on this program, and that would include reaching out to people who were former recipients or former users of the other program.
And thanks. And through the chair, I wasn't necessarily speaking to the focus group. I think what I'm asking for and hoping to see at some point in the future as part of an information or recommendation report is simply, as an organization, we offered a service to our transit riders. We made a choice as an organization to stop doing that. And the word replace was used many times when talking about putting this in place of it. If we don't have the ability to perhaps reach out or identify all the people who were part of the program before, and we have some limitations on how we can get information about how we're doing, I understand that. But what I'm asking for is for the organization to provide some type of analysis about how things are going and how that gap has been filled, because we created a gap here and we've replaced it with other service. How are we doing? Are we able to fill the gap? What measures are we still needing to meet? How are we evaluating those measures? What are the key performance indicators we're using to determine whether we're succeeding or not in terms of filling that gap? That's the kind of information I'm asking about, because I do appreciate the information report in front of us today, but I think it's missing that important information because this is not happening in a vacuum of just a new program. It's happening in the context of the fact that the previous one existed.
Thank you. And Director, did I hear there is going to be a report coming back?
Yes, there will be a final report on the program as part of the 2026 budget.
Okay, thank you. All right, there's no other speakers, so can I, all in favor to receive this item? Show of hands, please. Okay, thank you. Item 9, Investing in Canada Infrastructure Program, ICIP, Debt Financing Reappropriation. May I please have a mover and a seconder to put this report to the floor? Councillor Wang, Councillor Maureen Wilson, thank you. Is there any discussion on the item? I don't see any. Oh, okay, you're not on the list, but go ahead, Councillor Kassar.
Thank you, Chair Pauls. I had just one question for clarification. There's a change in funding, and it's explained in the report. And one of the changes is happening for bus priority measures. It's saying a reduced funding allocation by 5.5 million, and it speaks to some project scope and different time. I just wanted to understand, is that a change in the city's approach in building bus priority measures into the system, or is this something else happening here, through your chair?
Okay. Who will be, oh,
Through the chair.
Director
Happy
again.
to answer
Thank
that
you.
question about the reallocation from the A line to the bus expansion fleet cost. So it's $5.5 million. And the rationale for making the change is not a fulsome change in strategy, but it's a timing issue. So we can accomplish the same thing with transit signal priorities without extending further into the right of way for a period of time that the ISIP funds are live for. And then we believe there will be other future funding opportunities where we could apply and receive money for future state where we would want to potentially expand to have dedicated lanes in certain areas on the A line.
Thank you for the clarification. That's all I had.
Thank you. And next speaker is Councillor Nan.
Thank you, through you, Vice Chair. Just a quick question to staff in terms of the Birch Bridge project and the change in the funding, and I think specifically here is the CN shift in their position impacting the timelines for their bridge replacement, which is really unfortunate and really frustrating to hear yet again. Pushing that project completion down to 2033, can we get just a quick synopsis on what we're hoping to accomplish and where the pushback, or what the pushback is specifically?
Certainly, through the chair, and I will start, and I will ask my partner in crime, Director Kennedy, to provide some information as well. Director Kennedy and Director Riala and myself have met on the Birch Avenue Bridge replacement project, and certainly part of what is predicating this recommended change was the price tag on the MSF, and we did go through the exercise to see if there was areas in other projects that could be reallocated to it without having a detriment on the base project. So in this case, the Birch Avenue Bridge replacement. Through conversations with CN, it was CN's desire to change the timeline a little bit, which freed up the flexibility for us to de-scope and reapply that money to MSF while still giving us the functionality that we needed for opening day of the MSF and for the neighborhood build out. And I'll turn it over to Director Kennedy for details and conversations with CN. Thank you.
So we're working closely with transportation as, sorry, I will introduce myself first. Jackie Kennedy, Director of Engineering Services. We're working closely with the transportation and transit teams to look at all the needs that are required in this area and then planning that out over the time and the complexity that we have in the area, including the CN components that we're working around. The timing from CN is still not entirely clear. We're working with them. The environmental assessment is underway, and we're continuing to reach out to CN with regularity in hopes that we can get some clarity from them. In the meantime, we're working on the two-way conversion of Birch Avenue with traffic lighting being planned and resurfacing being conducted within this calendar year, and then future works thereafter. I hope that answers the question.
It does, thank you. And through you, Vice Chair, just a small follow-up then. Appreciating that the, in some ways, the municipality's interest was to be able to allocate the funding towards the overages. In terms of the use of that roadway, though, isn't it to service the MSF? So weren't those things needing to be aligned? I'm sorry if I'm missing something there, but in terms of like where the bridge is, how the bridge needs to change in order for us to maximize the MSF facility, I thought that needed to be done prior to. Sorry.
Through the chair, we still have most of the functionality that we need with what we're able to do. And then there'll be a future state functionality once the bridge replacement is able to take place. So it's sort of a step in instead of full day one is the best way to explain it.
Okay, thank you. And I'll take my final question with Director Kennedy offline. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Net. Next up, we've got Councillor Jackson.
Thanks, Vice Chair Francis. Through to Director Cozen Heath, the second bus barn, the maintenance and storage facility that we heard about this term of council balloon to $146 million over the original budget. I know our excellent representatives at FCM and AMO were hoping to tap into some oodles of money in a fund that especially the federal government had set aside for public transit across the country. So I'm seeing here an allocation from the Investing in Canada Infrastructure Program of $28 million. Is that part and parcel of the funding from senior levels of government, Director Cozen Heath, we were looking for? And possibly are we looking for some even more to help offset the overage? Through you, Vice Chair Francis, please.
Through you, Vice Chair. The $28 million is not new money, Councillor Jackson. It is a reallocation of the original $510 million in our suite of 10 ISA projects. As a result of the increased costs of the MSF, we certainly have continued to do advocacy and outreach to secure more funding through the mayor and through AMO, FCM, through the transit associations, et cetera. We have been unsuccessful in requests for additional funds. The federal government's response to requests for more money across the land for municipalities was you can move money between projects. We appreciate inflation. We appreciate escalated costs. That's happening everywhere. We will give you the flexibility to reallocate, which is what you see before you today.
Well, Director, thank you for that explanation and continued good luck with your pursuit. Appreciate your efforts up to now. Thanks very much, Vice Chair Francis.
Great, not seeing any further speakers to this. It's been moved and seconded. We'll have the electronic vote. Vote is up. And that carries 12-0. Moving on to item 9.2, Lincoln Alexander and Red Hill Valley Parkway Mobility Feasibility Study. Outstanding business list items citywide. Brian Hollingworth, Director of Transportation Planning and Parking, will introduce the presentation.
Thank you, Chair Francis. We're pleased to bring forward the report on the Lincoln Red Hill Valley Parkway feasibility study. Steve Malloy, Manager of Transportation Planning, will provide an overview of the staff report and highlights from the feasibility study, following which we are looking forward to questions and the discussion ensuing. As Steve will highlight, and I want to emphasize this report does not provide a recommendation as yet on widening or not widening. It presents the results of the feasibility study. More work is required, including consultation, before that recommendation can be made. So the purpose of this report today is basically to present the results to date and seek direction on next steps. Thanks, and I'll turn it over to Steve.
Thank you, Brian, and thank you, members of committee and the chair, and for the public at home. As Brian said, this is our presentation regarding the outstanding business item list for the potential to add lanes to the Link and the Red Hill. This debate has probably been going on for 10 years plus. I remember back in 2015, there's been discussion about adding lanes, and that discussion had continued through our transportation master plan, as well as other various discussions and motions at previous councils. So really the purpose of this study is to look at, is it feasible? Answer that question, because that's always been asked of us from staff perspective. And in undertaking the feasibility study, we're responding to that question, as well as trying to respond to the current and future demands of the facility itself, and looking at short and long-term alternatives. Again, this is a start, not a finish. This is the first step of a multi-phased, environmental assessment process. It requires public consultation and Indigenous engagement prior to moving forward with any preferred solution or identification of other alternatives. So to simply answer the question that was posed to us, yes, it is feasible to add lanes to the center of the parkways. And to do that, you'd also need a center median as well. So based on the feasibility work that is done to date, there's no need to expand the right-of-way that's currently in place for both parkways. Looking at the patterns of existing and future demands, this is kind of just a very simplistic table of combining the eastbound and westbound directions along the link, pre-pandemic and post-pandemic. And as you can see, the volumes have been increasing, both in the AM and the PM for this facility, approaching its current capacity for that facility. The distribution of that traffic is more or less 50-50. It might be 52% and 48%, but in that vicinity. A little bit different than the link is the Red Hill. That distribution is different. It's more 60% and 40% in the AM and then reversed in the PM. So it does operate a little bit differently than the link. But again, the pattern is the same, that pre and post pandemic, the volumes have been increasing for these parkways. And in fact, it's quite higher than the link itself. So although one linear facility connecting the provincial highways, they do operate through and have different functions. The other thing before, maybe this is a good slide, it's not just the current demand, but also the future demands of the facility. We have a newly approved truck route master plan that directs trucks from the lower city that we previously had to the parkways. And there is that need and demand to have an efficient movement of goods, as well as trying to offset any potential infiltration through neighborhoods when you have a facility that may be congested at periods of time. The HSR Re-envision project that Council has endorsed has 3 routes that do take the Red Hill Parkway. So there is that impact of future transit service along that facility. Currently, there's 1 route. Growth in itself. The study was based on 2031 forecasted numbers, but we have now 2051 forecasted numbers. We did some sensitivity tests as part of the Strategic Transportation Network Review, as part of the DC background study, that did validate that increasing demand for those facilities. And in addition to that, one potential pressure would be if the urban boundary expansion applications that could be coming in will further have those demands on all our road network or transit system, as well as the parkways itself. This is our list of potential alternatives. It's not the alternatives, again, because we're still in the first phase of the environmental assessment process and we haven't done any public consultation. There's the technical need, but also input. We need input. We need that voice of the community, of their thoughts, their ideas, their solutions. They could have other things that are outside of what we're looking at from a technical perspective of the parkways itself, notwithstanding the need from a holistic perspective, from a transportation network and systems perspective, to be multimodal, to invest in active transportation as we have been, to invest in transit as we have been, and just to look at the overall needs of the transportation system. In terms of the improvements, is it feasible to add a lane to the center with a center median? Yes, it is. That could be a long-term solution if that is the will of council to proceed with any work to look into it further. There are also interim solutions that could be vetted more closely, as well as notwithstanding that we need to connect to the highway system itself and how any improvement would interact and impact that provincial highway system. And the other thing I would mention that any additional lane, should that be something to move forward with, has that potential to have high occupancy vehicle lanes once that demand is in place. without any additional lane to put on a high occupancy vehicle as its current state, it would probably be counterproductive because the demand right now isn't quite there yet. Again, in terms of a draft evaluation criteria, again, it is draft. Part of the whole process, especially when we go to the public, is to provide comments and feedback on that and how can we improve. Is there something we have missed? If there's some more refinement or more details that need to be required and evaluated, that's just part of the process, and that's the prudent step to take. But certainly from a starting point, this is what was identified. In terms of high-level cost estimate, looking at the full widening of the link, we identified 81.5 million and the Red Hill at 56.2 million. Again, that's high level. As further work is done, those costs would be refined, not to, doesn't account for the impact of any tariffs or inflation and that type of thing. So those are always future anomalies and considerations as any work would proceed. And recent information that we have for the repaving of the Red Hill is 12.5 million, and the ongoing operating and maintenance costs of the Lincoln Red Hill are currently at 3.9 million annually. Again, the related studies, as part of moving this forward, continuing the feasibility study, we need to work with the Joint Stewardship Board, who oversees the sub-agreement on the joint stewardship for the Red Hill, to facilitate or help answer questions, prepare to answer questions for any thoughts of uploading the facilities to the province, to be part of the Red Hill Parkway Inquiry Working Group and Action Plan, as well as our ongoing multi-year budgeting processes, capital planning process. So with that, these are the recommendations in front of you for consideration and debate. And myself and Brian and others are available for any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Manager, for that presentation. I'm going to ask for a mover and seconder to receive the presentation and approve the recommendations, then I'll move to the speakers list. I have a mover, moved by Councillor Jackson, seconded by Councillor Spatafora. Is there any discussion? Speakers list is open. I've got Councillor Wang up first.
Thank you, Chair. Just through you, thank you, Manager Malloy, for your presentation. Help me understand slide 3, which is the actual timeline. We are currently at phase 2, which is alternative solutions. So I just want to be crystal clear as to where we are, because I want to make sure it is on the record that we are not necessarily making any type of decision today. What is this report that we are receiving? So that way, on public record, we know that council is not making any type of decision, and in fact, there is additional consultation to come.
Through the chair, that's correct. There is no recommended solution to do anything other than proceed with doing work and engaging with the public. So we're quite still in early stages. We've done some technical work. There is probably more follow-up work to be undertaken, and certainly we need to do full consultation with the public. We haven't had that opportunity to do so yet.
Okay. My second question, then, through you, Chair, is what is the estimated timeline for something like this? What are the, again, for public consumption, what is the next steps here?
So through the chair, the next steps is really to re-engage the study itself, to re-engage doing public notices, to have public meetings. Certainly a study of this magnitude, we wouldn't simply be doing one. We would do a couple of open houses or workshop type of public meetings open to the general public, as well as stakeholder meetings, engaging the Indigenous communities, how they want to be consulted, and as well as we have that next step of having the presentation should the Red Hill proceed. That would have to go through that process as well. So it really is a lot of variables of how to proceed next, depending on the will of council to treat the facility as one, or as recommended, the link itself. So there's lots of steps to go through yet. In terms of time, I would say at least a year more of work to do. I don't want to underestimate that because I know sometimes there's a lot of variables that come up and we have to address these things in a cohesive and respectful manner.
Okay. My last question then through you, Chair, is when we talk about a feasibility study, what is the difference between this and an environmental assessment?
Well, through the chair, it is a feasibility study, but it does follow the EA process, environmental assessment process. And really the environmental process is just a standardized process to make sure that we are following the proper steps for public engagement and to doing technical work. And this would follow the master planning process, so kind of a higher level process looking at a more holistic view of the impacts community-wide.
Okay. I appreciate that on the very last slide that you did reference the Joint Stewardship Board, as they do absolutely need to be involved in this conversation. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Councillor Wang. Next up, we've got Councillor Jackson, followed by Councillor Kassar and Councillor M. Wilson. Councillor Jackson, please.
Thanks, Vice Chair Francis, and thank you very much, Manager Malloy. I need to commend Councillor Spadafora, who I believe with council support requested that this whole potential of expanding both Red Hill and the Lincoln Alexander Parkway not lay dormant, and that the overall feasibility study, environmental assessments that are necessary, at least the conversations, could continue. And everybody knows where I stand in terms of my belief that it's been long overdue for the expansion of both. But let me ask some questions from your presentation, Manager Malloy. I know you and Director Hollingworth reported to this committee, I think a month or two ago, about the truck route master plan and the revisions. Can you just further, once again, reiterate and expand upon the fact that the Link and the Red Hill are definitely accommodating much more truck traffic than prior to the truck route master plan decision? Through you, Vice Chair Francis, please.
Through the chair, thank you, Councillor. I do forgive me, I don't have my numbers right in front of me for that increase in volume, but certainly when I presented to the truck route subcommittee, we did note that the percent of heavy trucks, the 18-wheelers or the WB20s, whatever name you want to call it, the larger trucks have certainly been diverting as intended out to the parkway system to improve the quality of life in the lower city and to improve equity serving communities as the will of that committee when they approved the truck route master plan.
Thank you, Manager Malloy. No specific numbers needed, and my apologies. It was at the truck route subcommittee that I serve on, not Public Works. Is it safe to say that, I think you just referenced it, you mentioned it as you were presenting, that if the congestion of the 4 lanes by and large on the Lincoln Red Hill continue and volumes continue to increase, that there is a potentiality of spillover into neighborhood roads for the offload of traffic through you? And I'm only asking you as a professional, and if that's not the case, then just say so as well. But I thought I heard you touch upon that in your presentation. Through you, Vice Chair Francis, please.
Through the chair, that is correct. Not to say that everybody would do that. That would certainly not be true, but certainly there would be that risk of that occurring if somebody was 2 interchanges away and didn't want to wait in the queue. They could just go through different neighborhoods to get to their destination.
Thanks, Manager Malloy. Well, just like I was sympathetic and sensitive and supported to the lower city councillors that wanted heavy truck traffic removed from downtown neighborhoods, exploring through downtown neighborhoods up on the mountain and on the East Mountain, we don't want any spillover of impatient increased volume and congestion spilling over into our lovely neighborhoods. The HSR, I'm seeing more and more buses using the Red Hill, and I see a part of the re-envisioning. You're talking about planning for more buses. Well, of course, that would be through Director Cozen Heath, but just from your standpoint as Manager in Transportation Planning, just further maybe elaborate upon that through you, Vice Chair Francis.
So through the chair, yes, I won't speak for transit, and I encourage them to step in, but again, it's part of the re-envision program. There's 3 routes that have been identified to go from the Queenston and King Street interchange in Green Hill interchange up to the Upper Red Hill Valley interchange to get to I think it's Village Green. The other thing I didn't mention, and my apologies, the facility itself is also within the 2041 frequent transit network as part of GO Transit. There is no current plans that I'm aware of. Again, that's part of the engagement and stakeholder engagement through this process. But when we had last talked to them, there was no current operational plans to do that. But certainly in their future thinking, they have been eyeing both the Red Hill and the Link as a facility that they could use.
Thank you, Manager. And Vice Chair, please, if I'm going over time, I can go back on a second time.
You've got a minute.
Thank you very much. I'm encouraged cautiously, Manager Malloy, to your bullet point, improve connections to 403 and the QEW. Now, I'm constantly, when I run into Director Hollingworth, and he usually goes down the other way of the hallway, I ask about the pinch points. Am I encouraged and am I interpreting correctly that conversations are continuing with MTO and at least the 403 pinch point? Am I hearing some news that may be corrected and worked on through the MTO? Through you, Vice Chair Francis, please.
So through the chair, certainly if we advance these things, that conversation will need to continue. In terms of the 403 itself, yes, the western part of the link and how it would connect into the 403 with the ongoing study of doing the upbound truck climbing lane and the on the on-ramp Brantford bound from Mohawk.
Okay. How am I doing still, Vice? One more question. Thank you. My last question. 81.5 million for the link, 56.2 million for the Red Hill. I'm not diminishing taxpayers' dollars at all, Manager Malloy, but I was pleasantly surprised. I thought that was going to be a much, much greater amount. Is that fairly current dollars, or can you further elaborate upon that? Because I surely thought that was going to be much more than the 137 overall you're reporting for both roads.
So through the chair, it's likely higher. This is based on older dollars, of course, when the study was being conducted, and doesn't account for the latest inflation or potential inflation in markets as they come. So it's as we know it today, or yesterday, I should say. But any type of work would have to update any of these numbers. And of course, through the detailed design process, those refinement numbers will further get refined and should always be brought forward to committee and council for approvals.
Thanks so much, Manager Malloy. And I'll just go on a second time for a speech after all the Q&As are done. Vice Chair Francis, thank you.
Sure, sounds good. Moving on to Councillor Cassar.
Thanks, Vice Chair Francis, and I'll likely have to go on to a second time too. And assuming we're putting the report and the presentation together based on your language, when we put this on the floor?
Correct.
Yeah, okay, thanks. First question is just not specifically on the financial costs that Councillor Jackson was just asking about, but other things that are costs like public health and emissions and that sort of thing, not included directly in the feasibility assessment. And I heard you loud and clear, this is a feasibility assessment, it's not a recommendation. So those weren't really covered in this report. Just want to understand, in the past, in a project like this, have they been included? And if not, what's the plan going forward to include those very important costs to the community? Through you, Chair.
Yeah, so through the chair, that's a great question. The unfortunate circumstance when the study was initiated during the pandemic, it was prior to the Climate Change Office being brought together and created itself, and public health had other priorities at that time, rightfully so. As with other studies, and this one as we move forward, those offices for sure would be integrated into helping us arrive at some of the greater community cost benefits of projects such as this, and alternatives thereof.
Okay, thank you very much, Manager Malloy, through you, Chair, pointing out the timelines and certain other priorities are happening, and the acknowledgement that we need to include them going forward. So I'll have more to say about that. But I think including them in the terms of reference or making sure they're part of it is very important. I want to switch gears to talk about time. So this is about time of people in cars and trucks moving along the link. And what I understand from the report is the pinch point is really peak hours in the morning and the afternoon in both directions. Outside of that, largely, there isn't a capacity issue currently or forecast in the near future. If you could just confirm that.
Sorry, could you repeat the question?
I think the basis for this project is about congestion during peak hours. right? There's an hour or so in the morning and then same thing in the afternoon. And outside of that, there isn't a capacity problem. Is that correct?
So through the chair, it's actually much more than just a peak hour problem. So it probably historically had been. Now that peak hour has expanded to peak hours. It's more of a period, so it can extend. There's daily variation because of the intermittent, patterns sometimes that occur. The reliability of travel is just not there, and it could be 4 or 5 hours one day. It could be 1 hour another day. So there's a lot of fluctuation and variation that occurs. Again, more data will help define that. I think regularly monitoring volumes will help define that and through different times of year as well. Because another contributing factor would be, we've only had one year count of the impact of the truck traffic to the parkway, so it'd be good to know, building more longitudinal data on what the needs are.
Okay. Thank you for that. And maybe you're not able to answer this fully, you can take it more offline, but just at a high level, we're talking about levels of service and the amount of time, and there's A to F levels of service. Can you give a sense on the amount of minutes, for example, coming across the link that might be associated with those different levels of service? And the follow-up to that would be then, how are we putting a monetary value to that? And then the other impacts that I was asking about earlier.
So through the chair, the volume to capacity, there's a couple of different ways to look at that. And usually when we look at intersection level, we look at time. In this case, it's really supply and demand of the lane capacity for the facilities. So the demand is more than the capacity. In terms of time, as I mentioned, there's variability from day to day. I did a quick little Google search from Stony Creek to Ancaster, and the range could be 22 to 38 minutes or 28 minutes to 50 minutes, depending on the time of day and direction that you're going. So there's a range. Some days would be better than other days. In terms of the cost of that, again, there's a cost of congestion study that was done by Transport Canada many years ago. It's probably outdated, but any kind of delay, the delay of goods, the delay of people time, and the impact of that, there's a lot of cost variables and to be considered, and we can be more broad and inclusive of those type of numbers moving forward.
Yeah, thank you. And I guess I'll ask one more question and then go on a second time, if that's okay. Yeah, I think that's very important, is we're making the connection between money invested, ongoing operation costs, and then what the benefit is versus alternatives. And I guess I'll speak more to that later. But wanted to ask about the modern tools we have available for analysis, and specifically around digital twinning. I was at the Pivot conference in October, maybe sometime last year, November, and was speaking to folks from Mohawk who have this, I guess it's not new, but it's evolving technology of digital twinning, which is to be able to model the city and monitor, put inputs in on traffic, pollution, all different sorts of things in order to make better holistic decisions, because a city, through your chair, is a complex network, right? We're not just talking about two very important transportation corridors. Impact to overflow was mentioned earlier. So there's all these sorts of things that could impact it and help make a better decision. So my question would be, do we have any experience doing that? Because it's something I think that we would and potentially would put forward an amendment on that, maybe not today, but at council, to make sure we take advantage of all the tools that we have to make the best decision. So through you, Chair.
So through the chair, we have not been using that tool. AI itself is something evolving, and it will be changing the course of how we do transportation planning in the future. For the time being, we're taking that consistent approach that's been used with other municipalities across the GTA and elsewhere in Canada. So it's kind of a more traditional transportation look at things, and the thing with models, there's many different ones, and it all depends on the inputs that you provide and the availability of that data. So it's very can be very complex. Not to say we shouldn't be looking at AI. It's just what's the most reliable tool. And every time I talk to somebody, the newest tool is the better tool. So it's very difficult to manage that and to know how to apply it properly for the city.
Thanks, Councillor. We'll get you on for a second time there. Moving on, the speakers list here, we've got Councillor M. Wilson, followed by myself, and then second-time speakers. Go ahead, Councillor Wilson.
Thank you. Thank you, Manager Malloy. Just before I lose it, on the financial costs that you had up on the board, there's only one date assigned to one cost, and that's the repaving in 2019. Does that mean all of those costs on the board are pegged to that indexed year, or is there a variance?
So through the chair, the operating and maintenance cost is current, but the capital costs, I don't remember off the top of my head the year that the costing. I don't know if Brian can assist with that.
Through the chair, the capital costs represent current dollars, so they were prepared by the consultant in 2023.
Thank you. The capital or current. Okay, thank you. If you could just help me, just so I fully understand the engagement part and moving forward. I believe I read in the report that letters were sent out to different Indigenous communities. There was no response received, so that should be telling to us about maybe how to do consultation. But when I'll just read, I just want to make sure I clearly understand the expectation. Under future engagement, it says stakeholder meetings will be held prior to the PICs and on an ad hoc basis when required. And then it says prior to advancing to phases 3 and 4, Indigenous engagement and public and stakeholder consultation must take place. I just want to make sure I fully understand the practice and the expectation here. Is the recommendation from staff saying that Indigenous consultation must be and will be part of the next phase to guide the work? If that is true, are you able to define, is it your expectation that is just the Joint Stewardship Board and/or it extends to others? Thank you.
So through the chair, specific to Indigenous engagement, it's common practice for us to send out a letter first to make them aware, and then we always follow up with phone calls and make sure that there is follow-up. It's just not a stagnant letter that goes nowhere. That's it's not true engagement, but we want to make sure we put on record that they want to be engaged.
Right.
As we move forward with any Indigenous engagement, is understanding what they want to be engaged upon, what their specific issues are, and it should be ongoing. So part of this process is to kind of flush out, maybe it's too early in the process for them to have meaningful input. They want that meaningful input at future stages if it goes to that stage. So it's really understanding their concerns and their all the communities, not just the Joint Stewardship Board, all the Indigenous communities of what their needs are, what their comments are, and how we can be respectful and mindful of those issues and how we can integrate them as part of the process.
Thank you. Chair, so just so I'm clear, staff and the consultants have identified all the Indigenous communities and or groups they deem necessary to engage with, or is it only based on the receipt they received from the letters and the subsequent calls? Through the chair.
So through the chair, we don't, no response isn't a response. We need to connect with the communities and understand if they want to be involved, when they want to be involved, how they want to be involved. So I don't think anything ever gets sent out and put into a vacuum. We want to make sure that we do connect with the people to understand how we can get them into the processes. Maybe I'm missing the question. Hopefully I'm not answering it correctly. Sorry.
Thank you. I'll try again. It's me. I'm looking for a pathway forward, and so that I can be held accountable on a few things. Who is responsible for identifying Indigenous interests? 2, do we feel confident that we have all those Indigenous interests identified? 3, what does engagement look like? I thought I heard through the chair that it's determined by them, will this committee receive some sort of update on what that is? And 4, what is the role of the Joint Stewardship Board in that engagement? So I thought I heard you say it's not exclusive to the board. I'm just trying to get a sense of who is or what is informing the corporation on what engagement is, what it looks like, and who it is with, through the chair.
So through the chair, I'll take another shot at it, and please always follow up with me. So we are responsible to engage with them on their interests. In some projects, they may not have an interest. It's not our role. Broadly, any Indigenous community, there may be all interested, there may be one interested, there may be none interested, but that's not for us to dictate to them. It's them. We engage them to ask of their interest in a project, and if they need more information, we could set up one-on-one meetings with them, discuss everything, and that's been successful in the past to have these one-on-one meetings for clarity. So at this current phase of it, it's usually a high level, a desktop review. They might have issues with drainage or stormwater or wildlife habitat or some potential archaeological concerns from all the different communities. The link is different than the Red Hill Parkway. They're very distinct and very distinct jurisdictions. So the JSB has no jurisdiction over the link. Maybe that gray area where the link and the Red Hill link up. But from a joint stewardship board perspective, they work together, council and the Haudenosaunee Confederacy and others, to provide that feedback from a board perspective. That is outside of also engaging with the Haudenosaunee Confederacy itself. So there's this kind of a dual process there because the board is a separate entity than the Confederacy itself for the Red Hill, versus there could be other communities that might have an interest of the link, or maybe even within the Red Hill. We don't want to be exclusionary. Everybody would be engaged, and they may show interest, and then how we proceed with, depending on what that interest is, I think it's a little bit reactionary to understand what those impacts are and how we can adequately address the concerns.
Director Hollingworth, would you like to pick up on this? I saw you with your hand up there.
Thank you. Through the chair, I just wanted to add a couple points. One, some of you may be asking, why haven't we done this already? And it's because through motions in 2022, we were sort of directed to pause the study to make sure we were in alignment with the JSB agreement. And as Steve says, we will, with direction from council, we will restart those engagement and reach out as discussed. And another thing is we do need to follow the environmental assessment process, which has guidance on consultation with Indigenous groups. And thirdly, we will work closely with the Indigenous Relations Office in the City Manager's office, I think, who have developed a lot of improved practices and processes, and we'll draw on those. Thank you.
So, sorry, through the chair, if I can just add on to that, and what I have learned a lot over the last few years about this, it's really about developing relationships, and part of this process and any other process is to build those relationships and continue those relationships.
Satisfied, Councillor?
Thank you. I'll follow up with some detailed questions just as I try to enumerate. Thank you. But I realize I'm past my time, Chair. I do understand what the report was saying in terms of the distinct jurisdictional divide between the link and the expressway. But I also thought I heard, and this is not a got you moment, I just want to make sure I fully understand and am held accountable, that regardless of that jurisdictional divide, we are still going to engage with the board on the link. If I've misheard that, I apologize, and I didn't mishear. Okay, thank you. I do have a few more questions, so if I could get back on, thank you.
Sure. Next up, we've got Councillor McMeekin.
Thanks, Chair. Just checking in here. It seems to me I recall that we had a discussion around the horseshoe about asking the provincial government to consider taking over the Lincoln, Alexander, and Red Hill Creek roads, highways. Is that correct?
Through the chair, yes, that's correct. That's an outstanding motion, an outstanding business item list.
Okay. Obvious supplemental, has there been any action or response to date to that? And regardless of whether there has been or not, what would the reaction be to, are there any difficulties that would be new if the province were to decide to take over those two important projects?
So through the chair, if the province had any conditions as part of any uploading or no conditions, I think we'd have to evaluate those at that time. I'm not aware of any response back from the province to speak any more clearly about that. Certainly, if the MTO did take the facility and they had no obligation of the city to do anything further, then our work would be done. But certainly the control of those facilities would be in MTO and all their permit control areas, corridor management policies, and all those things would likely apply to a new provincial facility.
So the obvious, to me, in my humble opinion, the obvious conclusion logically is that given we're at the now beginning again stage, we have the ability to start over again every single day. Would it not be prudent to continue to press the province for a decision as to whether or not they're going to, in fact, take on those responsibilities, which the council, broadly based as I recall, given the expense and the use of those roads now, they're essentially provincial highways, made practical sense. That's my question. I'm concerned that we get that sorted out before we spend months or who knows how long going down another path, not knowing what the province's response to our legitimate request is going to be.
Through the chair, I think that's the will of council and any direction that's provided as part of this meeting of how they want this project to proceed, this report. And then there's outstanding business item lists that need to come back to this, or I think a general issues committee.
So at some point, I'm assuming we'll have a vote on the report. I'd be prepared to make an amendment that we seek specific and further clarification from the province as to where they are on this issue.
Okay, we'll do that when we get past our second time speakers here. Thanks, Councillor McMeekin. Councillor Spatafora is up now. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Just, I have one question of clarification. I should do a better job of listening again, but I was a bad student, so here we are again. Did I hear that the link is also going to fall under the JSB's thing? No? Everybody's shaking their head. Manager, the link has nothing to do with the JSB, correct?
Through the chair, that's correct. They're separate facilities. JSB only deals with and only the Red Hill.
So there'll be no consultation through the JSB on the link?
Through the chair, that's correct.
Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Spatafora, and I'll ask you to take the chair for a moment here. Just go
ahead.
Thank you. Just a question for me, and then I have an amendment to make, but I will do that. I'll tell everyone what it is, but then I will do that at the end of second time speakers. My question is in relation to volume. What is the volume difference between the Red Hill Valley Parkway and the Lincoln Alexander Parkway?
Manager?
Through the chair, you think I would know that on the top of my head? If I recall off the top of my head, just using a peak hour, there was today in 2023 at one point in one peak direction on the Red Hill, it's up around, it was over 4,000. And then on the link, it's about 3,800 and change. So it's a difference of a couple of hundred vehicles, 200 to 300 vehicles typically. That's in the peak hour. During the day, there's variation, but typically the Red Hill carries more volume than the link.
Councillor Francis?
Thank you, Chair, and I appreciate that. I know the Red Hill is more heavily used than the Link. I want to add an amendment to 2 and 3 here, and that's after where it says Lincoln Alexander Parkway, and just simply add Red Hill Valley Parkway. And then on number 3, the same thing. After Lincoln Alexander Parkway, add Red Hill Valley Parkway. So I'm not going to move that right now. Wait till we exhaust the second-time speakers list. I will move that amendment at that time. And
so I'll give you the chair back, and then you can go through the second time.
Okay.
Thank you.
Perfect. So, and then I will also add Councillor McMeekin's amendment at that time. So I've taken the chair back here, and we're on to second-time speakers. Councillor Wang, please.
Thank you. Just a question on page 10 of 12 in the report, which is asking for next steps. And I think that Councillor Maureen Wilson has already started down this path of understanding what does consultation look like. I just want to understand the difference between next steps in the middle of the page versus alternatives at the end of the page. What are the differences there?
So through the chair, next steps is if this report is received, those are the next logical steps of this process. The alternative is the alternative to the recommendation report itself. So it really changes the entire direction of what's being presented in front of the committee today.
Because next steps talks about the environmental assessment process. That's the assumption on both the Red Hill Valley as well as the Lincoln Alexander, but then the alternatives is essentially separating them out and having work only on the link, and then work for the Red Hill Valley would be contingent on the direction of the Joint Stewardship Board. Is that correct?
Through the chair, that's correct.
Okay. My next question then, through you, Chair, is how do we reconcile some of the challenges existing today? So we've heard from other organizations and groups about, say, noise pollution, or maybe the idea of particulates. How does existing today's conditions factor into potentially tomorrow's environmental assessment? I'd like to understand how do they work or refer to each other, or is that a brand new sort of study? How does that work?
So through the chair, we could forecast out based on what the expected volume would be, and understand the differences of today versus tomorrow of greenhouse gas emission and particulate matter and all those types of things. Again, there are forecasts. They're not predictory. We can't predict. Policies like more greening vehicles and all that kind of stuff would naturally would hopefully decrease that or keep it stable. All those policy changes and variables you can't forecast that. It's kind of market driven. So, or reduction in volume because of other investments in other infrastructure that we're doing as a city. So, again, it's a forecast. We can certainly forecast out based off of what we see today, but it doesn't predict.
Okay. I think that the reasoning for my question is that we've received complaints about the existing noise levels of the existing Red Hill Valley and the Link, and the opportunity of expansion of both of those very important roadways will likely increase the noise and the air pollution that might be there. So I just want to understand, like, how do those existing complaints also get factored in as we potentially make a decision at some point in the future to say yay or nay to this? So I'd just like to understand that process.
Yes, so through the chair, speaking to noise specifically, because we have heard that complaint at a couple of locations, if there's a direction to move forward with any kind of addition of lanes, certainly a noise study would have to be undertaken to deal with that as part of that process to make sure that that forecast is mitigated. In terms of today's noise problems, it's something that as a corporation, having to have a department undertake a noise study, if that is the direction, to see what improvements may or may not be made. But that's not, this solely looks at the holistic view. If we were to add lanes, a noise study would have to be done to understand those impacts and to mitigate those.
Okay, all right. Sorry, my last question, sorry about that. But then my last question then is, again, getting back to page 10 of 12, where we're talking about next steps versus alternatives. So we would have to accept all three recommendations, so 1, 2, and 3, and then the next steps on page 10 would be enacted, is that correct?
Yes, that would be correct.
So help me understand then, if we needed to go to the alternatives, also on page 10, it would be we have to strike down 1, 2, and 3 in order to have the alternatives. I don't understand how procedurally this would work if we wanted to look at it at the alternatives.
Councillor Wang, if I may, that's what my amendment addresses. I'm essentially adding what the recommendation on page 10 from staff, the alternative recommendation. By adding the Red Hill, it essentially does exactly what staff are asking for. I don't know if that helps clear that up for you or not.
No, sorry, could you just say that again?
So my amendment that I'm proposing, by adding on section 2 and 3 in the recommendation, by adding Red Hill Valley Parkway on both 2 and 3, it's essentially exactly what staff are recommending on page 10 of the alternative recommendation.
Oh, okay. I will read that a little further then. Thank you. Thank you.
Next up, we've got Councillor Jackson, please.
So I will reserve the right, because I only have a speech now, to give Vice Chair Francis, and if some of my colleagues still have Q&As, I reserve the right to let them go ahead with their Q&As. But if they begin speeches, I won't be happy. Okay, anyway, so I reserve the right. Keep me on the list then, because I want all Q&As to be exhausted first. Thanks, Vice Chair Francis.
Sounds like we do have more Q&As coming up here. So Councillor Cassar, please.
Yeah, at this point, I only have a comment, so if you want to put those at the end, I'm fine with that too.
Councillor M. Wilson, we've quickly gotten to you here.
Never wish to make Councillor Jackson unhappy. So make sure I'm in the form of a question. I really appreciate, he's not here, but Councillor Spadafora making that comment, because that's the kind of clarification I was seeking. So I thought I heard two things. I thought I heard an affirmative from you that we were going to engage the board on the link as part of our Indigenous outreach, and I acknowledged the jurisdictional difference. But then I heard you respond in the affirmative to Councillor Spadafora. So that's why I was trying to seek, who are we engaging with, and what does engagement look like? Thank you.
So through the chair, I have brain fog because I have suffering a little bit of a cold. So through the chair, the Joint Stewardship Board does not have any jurisdiction over the link. They only have jurisdiction over the Red Hill. We would certainly engage the Haudenosaunee Confederacy on both projects, but who also form one party of the Joint Stewardship Board, because that's just how we engage all of our Indigenous communities. But certainly there's no oversight of the link through the JSB.
Just thank you very much. So you're stating, you're identifying the Haudenosaunee Confederacy as an interest with respect to the link. But you are making a clear distinction that when it comes to the expressway, that interest it takes a different form. Okay.
Through the chair, that's correct.
All right, thank you. Appreciate that clarification. My other questions were just, my apologies, I'm just seeking it now. I really appreciated through the chair in the consultant's report, the reference to equity, but I was trying to understand in the matrix evaluative table, I didn't see its inclusion there. And so that led me back to why was it included in the first place, and or how is it going to be included? Through the chair.
So through the chair, again, it's a draft. That technical report is a draft, so some refinement. Certainly, we've been doing a lot more work and progress on applying the equity lens through just neighborhood mapping and understanding those issues. Also, from a transit perspective and having equity in more affordable modes of transportation, active transportation crossings of the facility, all those are equity serving modes of transportation to help with this. Carpooling, if that's something in the future would happen, that provides a cost savings. So there's the economic lens of that, as well as the integrity of the truck route network that we had to, that overall more holistic view of equity from a city perspective, and what those parkways could also help with other communities outside of its boundaries itself. So I think there's still some progress and some work that we can improve upon that. And also based on public consultation, if we're not doing a good job and we need to add that comments, then that's the layer that we're missing as part of this process to make sure that we capture these things properly and that we provide that fulsome view.
So just to make sure, when you talk about in the increasing transportational equity, that will be included in both the consultation moving forward and/or the assessment moving forward? I just want to make sure I'm clear, Steve.
Through the chair, I would say both.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. My apologies, I'm just going to my notes. Just a small point of interest of mine. I thought I didn't understand this point in the consultant's report. It gives an account of 2 stakeholder meetings that were held in April of 2021 with Metrolinx, MTO, et cetera. And it says a discussion from those meetings were that there are no current expansion plans for Highway 403 or the QE. But then I thought I read later on in the report of the consultant that there are additional, on page 63, there are additional improvements proposed for or to MTO facilities. Could you help me understand that? Way above my pay grade, but I interpret when I read that as 2 contradictory things, through the chair.
So through the chair, I think the first instance that you read was more of the longitudinally through the QEW and 403. There was no immediate plans in their capital. They have a 3-year capital program, highways program, that they weren't adding lanes. However, the truck climbing lane that they are currently working on is it's a spot improvement, a modification at a particular junction, but not throughout the entire corridor. So there's a distinction between that.
Thank you. Those are my questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Wilson. Up next is Councillor Spatafora.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Just a question. I'm hearing obviously there's the concerns around the noise and some of the other things around the expansion. One of my questions around the trucks that have been put onto the link. So we've taken them out of the downtown core because for noise, air, all those sorts of things. And we've moved them onto the link. Is there any way of stopping them from going on the link? Could we take the trucks off the link for the mountain residents to not hear the noise or the pollution that it causes through the mountain neighborhoods? Do we have the ability to tell them they can't use the roadways through you, Chair?
Through the chair, I think that is something that would be brought forward to the truck route subcommittee to consider and provide direction to staff to evaluate what the impacts would be.
Okay, thank you. I'm just want to make sure we're covering all of our bases, and then amendments at the end.
Yes, after the second time speakers list, which is exhausted.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Up next, we've got Councillor Jackson, followed by Councillor Kassar.
So thank you very much, Vice Chair Francis. I don't have any more questions then for Manager Malloy. I didn't know if he needed a respite or something, but you're okay. He's willing to stay there and listen to speeches. Okay. I just want to say how much I'm appreciative of the recommendation that's here before us from staff. They've obviously taken a lot of time, done a lot of homework to bring this here before us. I'm very supportive, obviously, of all 3, 1, 2, and 3. I do think we need to, Vice Chair Francis, definitely move ahead on the Lincoln Alexander Parkway. I'm open and supportive to your future amendment to include the Red Hill Valley Parkway. But at the very, very least, and again, I'll support that, but at the very, very least, I think we need to move ahead with staff's recommendations here. You know, I'm going to take most of the young people that are now around this horseshoe back 30 years when you're all still in school, and I'll take you back and yes, if it's a compliment, take it and accept it. Prior to 1997, before the link was open, approximately 40 to 50,000 vehicles a day were using the Mohawks, Lime Ridge Roads, Stone Churches, Fennels on the mountain. When the Red Hill, before the Red Hill opened in 2007, there were 40 to 50,000 vehicles using the lovely neighborhood roads, primarily in Wards 4 and in Wards 5. So these ring roads, the corridors, these transportation corridors of the Red Hill and Link have helped to take and alleviate all that extra volume of traffic that were using roads, arterials, but that were using roads that arterials lead into the lovely neighborhoods. And I'll speak for across the East Mountain specifically, but across the mountain generally speaking. Do you know the estimate that the consultants first said before building the Lincoln Red Hill was roughly, and staff can correct me, was roughly about 40,000 vehicles a day they were estimating. Today, I believe, current staff reports say 80,000 to 90,000 vehicles a day. And I would say it's been a massive success story because I know from the Kenilworth access up in my ward, the number of heavy trucks, the number of extra volume of traffic that was regularly using the Kenilworth before the link was opened in 97 was a huge disruption to neighborhoods on the East Mountain, and they were overwhelmingly supportive of getting the link and as well the Red Hill Valley Parkway built for those environmental reasons of the escarpment passes and protecting them and improving the quality of life for neighborhoods on the East Mountain. The master truck route plan, I've mentioned it several times. I know there was no quid pro quo, and I'm very respectful of that. But we now have, beyond a shadow of a doubt, documented much more heavy trucks, 18-wheelers, over 5 axles, using both the Red Hill and the Lincoln Alexander Parkway. And if that continues, for all the reasons of deliveries and whatever else might be the case, and downtown lower city neighborhoods have been spared to a large degree, which I'm very grateful for, we must pursue looking at the expansion of at least starting with the Lincoln Alexander Parkway. I'm also encouraged to see the chart and the plan that Manager Malloy put up here about the fact that we can expand the link moving inwards. In other words, we don't have to take up any land along the berms and buffers along the Lincoln Alexander Parkway. I was very pleasantly relieved and thrilled to see this graphic that we can expand the extra 2 lanes inward and put up that barricade that many people had called for along both major roadways for quite a while. I can tell you that I was at the ribbon cutting of the Leons that came to the East Mountain Business Park, the Red Hill Business Park, back in 04-05. Spoke to the original owner of the Leons. I was honored to be at the ribbon cutting. And he said the main reason why they chose that location was in anticipation, Vice Chair Francis, of the Red Hill Valley Parkway being built a couple of years later. And we've seen the burgeoning and ballooning and expansion of all the business and investment and jobs that have occurred and continue to occur at within the Red Hill Business Park, Commercial Park as well. So I want to conclude, Vice Chair Francis, by saying that it seems to me staff have focused on the link, and it sounds like additional discussions are continuing with the MTO, and it seems like we may have some movement, if I've interpreted correctly, with the pinch point at the 403. So again, to conclude, at the very least, I'm strongly supportive of staff's 3-part recommendation. I will support including the Red Hill Valley Parkway. I think there are some additional complexities there, but this whole issue about worrying about induced demand, folks, the single-family vehicle is not going anywhere. And at a time when we've got the bully puppet, the bully pulpit from the south of President Trump, and the impact as well to our unionized auto workers in Ontario. My goodness, this is a time further that we just can't say we want to deviate and move away from supporting the single-family vehicle as well, while building upon multimodal transportation as well. Thank you very much, Vice Chair Francis, for your indulgence.
Thanks, Councillor Jackson. And moving on to Councillor Kassar, please.
Thanks, Chair. I think puppet was correct, actually.
We could use both.
I'll agree on that one. Disagree a little bit on some of the other comments and approaches, but this is a feasibility study about is it possible, and then about engagement, right? So I think that's important. I think it's really important, though, that we are asking the right question and defining the problem we're trying to solve. A recent example of this was when we had that information report about additional revenue sources, and there was the municipal land transfer taxes on there, and we had a whole lot of people here, and there was a study done by, I think, a real estate group or something, and they did a study, pardon me? Yeah, doesn't matter who, but it was, do you want an additional tax? And of course, the survey brought back answers, of course, no, we don't, because it wasn't the right question to be asked, and I'm not trying to bring that topic up, but it's a case in point. If you don't ask the right question and you don't try to solve the right problem, you get suboptimal results. So I will, not today, but for council, I'll work with staff to bring an amendment on just the process and what's included in the engagement, because the engagement is important, as well as analysis. Because right now, I think the problem to be solved appears to be how do we move more vehicles on our municipal parkways? Okay, reduce congestion and move more vehicles more quickly. I think what we really want, as governors, we want to find out what the most cost-effective way, healthiest solution, or sweetest solutions is to best accommodate growing transportation needs in a diverse, growing city, right? If we step back and look at it more holistically, I think we get a better answer, and that may or may not lead to the conclusion or the recommendation that's in the consultant's report. But I think it's upon us to look at it more holistically, do the proper analysis, and determine, there's $138 million right now, going to be more, as Manager Malloy said. Is this the best way to spend it? Maybe there are alternatives on the parkways, maybe there are better ways to spend it to offer within the city better transportation. I think the consultant's report said that the link is more of a local traffic option, whereas Red Hill is more through traffic. Paraphrasing, so that would tend to suggest that there's maybe local transportation solutions for the link that may be able to offset the demand, and we can still have the trucks moving quickly, and the people who need to use a car are moving quickly. I think the bottom line is we have many modes of transportation. No one's trying to make the car go away. Just like our delegate said earlier, it's about giving options, right? If you want to drive, you should drive. If you need to drive, please drive. If you can't afford a car, or it would be really nice if you didn't have to pay for a car, then you should have we should enable the option to do that, right? So I think that's what I will work on with staff and bring an amendment to council to make sure that we're doing the holistic review and we're using all the tools available to us. I'll have some more conversations about digital twinning, and happy to talk to any of my colleagues about the possibility of that. But that's what I'm interested in through this process. And we'll work in the next few days to hopefully bring that to council. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Kassar. We'll look for that email to come through, and we'll deal with that amendment at council. And we've got a first-time speaker here, and Councillor Tannison.
First-time speaker. I'll just make a few comments, and it's regarding the AEGD and the Red Hill Industrial Parks. I'm going to enthusiastically support any efforts to widen the roads, the Link and the Red Hill, mainly because we're looking at these two industrial parks as our economic drivers. And every time I go to an opening for UPS, for Leon's, not that I was there at that time, but many new places are opening up. We've got new development coming. They are all going to be supported by truck traffic. So if you look and anticipate what's going to happen, we need to make an appropriate choice for what's going to happen and what's going to be there in 5 or 10 years. So that's why I'm enthusiastically supporting these roads to be widened, so forth. Yes, let's look at it. Let's do it properly. Get all the viewpoints we need. I do understand some of the concerns around noise and so forth, but when I drive to Toronto, I see walls up and houses are on the exact opposite side, and those people are living comfortable lives. So I can say without, we want perfect, but we have to move forward for a city in the sense of we have to grow our city. We need places for people to work, and those places for people to work are going to be dependent on truck traffic, making it safely and quickly to and from the industrial parks. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Chattison. We've got a couple more speakers here. We've got Councillor Beattie and Councillor Nan. Councillor Beattie, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Chair, and through you. I'm just hearing all these wonderful reminiscent stories from some of my colleagues and some inspirational ones as well, and some good conversation around the table. Very appreciative for that. Councillor Jackson, I am both old and young enough to remember getting from Winona to Upper James back in the 90s. It was a task. It took a while. It was some undertaking just to get from one side to the other, and obviously we recognize that there's been benefit in the investment that the city made in the installation of this road network. But also challenge folks during rush hour, put on your Waze, put on your Google, and where does it take you? It will bypass the congestion and spill you out into these side streets where we used to once travel. I did that in traveling to Hamilton Conservation Authority board meeting that happens in Ancaster. I live on the opposite side of the city, and I just plugged in my app to show me the best route, and it took me all manner of places to avoid the congestion. And that's the technological reality in which we live, that it's like water. It will find the point of least resistance in order to get to its destination. I'm obviously very supportive of this and will be voting in favor of moving in this direction. But I do want to acknowledge that we heard earlier from the delegate that the better option would be, in a perfect world, to move interregional transit up the food chain in terms of priority. It would be hard to argue against that, but it's also very hard to implement because it's well beyond the scope and scale of the ability of the city of Hamilton to try to improve network connectivity into places like Burlington, Oakville, Vaughan. There are people who are living within the city of Hamilton that are traveling all over southern Ontario to get to places of employment. And even though it would be ideal to try and invest in ways to allow people to get to and from their destinations in a more effective and more efficient way, we're simply not there right now. So we have to look at what we have the ability to do. And right now, it looks like the things within our control will lead us down a path of expanding capacity on these key pieces of city infrastructure.
Thanks, Councillor Beattie. Councillor Nan, please.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Just appreciation of staff for the presentation and the report. Also appreciative of the dialogue around the table from a good governance perspective, appreciating Councillor Cassar holding his amendments proposed until council in order to give not only staff an opportunity to speak to the proposed amendments that he's bringing, but also give us as colleagues an opportunity to engage further on those questions. I would also appreciate, and I know it's not technically on the table yet, Chair, but just given the hour, it is 4 p.m., there is a memorial that many of us are trying to get to on time, that I would say the same be considered for any further amendments to this report as well. I came here prepared to support the recommendations from staff. I did not come here today prepared to entertain any of the alternatives because I didn't know they were going to be put on the table. And so in order for me to practice my due diligence, I would need to have the appropriate time to engage with staff to consider those alternatives in due diligence. So from that perspective, I just implore to you, Chair, that in an effort to support us to get to the memorial on time, that we proceed with the amendment, or the report as written, and amendments come to council. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Nan, and I certainly, if Councillor McMeekin, who's moving one of those amendments, is okay with that.
I'm easy, Chair, as long as we are clear we're going to have that discussion at council. I'm fine with that.
Okay. I'll do the same. I do want to flesh out a couple quick questions first on my amendment. So I'll do that first. I'll pass the chair over to Councillor Spadafora.
Go ahead.
So just by adding my amendment, by adding the Red Hill Valley Parkway at the end of 2 and 3 on the recommendations from staff, is engagement with the JSB on the Red Hill captured in that amendment? And I want to be clear, just for the Red Hill.
Through the chair, through previous motions, we also already have committee and council direction to engage with the JSB. That's why we didn't include it here.
Thank you for that. And my second question would be, through you, Chair, by adding this amendment, should there be any hiccups whatsoever with the Red Hill or the JSB, and we approve the amended report, can staff still proceed with the phases of the link? Is it going to hinder any of the work that's going to be done on the link, or?
Director?
Through the chair, from a technical perspective, in advancing the next phases of the EA, I think things can proceed in parallel at different paces depending on how things go with the JSB. So I think we're somewhat flexible in that regard.
Okay, that's all for me. I will move those and deal with that at council. We don't have any further speakers to this, so I guess we will have the vote on the original recommendations, which is moved by Councillor Jackson and seconded by Councillor Spadafora. That vote is up. And that carries 12-0. Moving on to item 9.3, amendments to the outstanding business list. A, items considered complete and needing to be removed. And B, items requiring a new due date. May I please have a mover and seconder to approve the amendments to the outstanding business list, please? Moved by Councillor Nan, second by Councillor Beatty. Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll have that vote. Vote is up. That carries 11-0. Moving on to item 9.4, PW 25022, Centralized Municipal Processing Center Agreement for the Red Hill Light Camera Program. May I please have a mover and seconder to put the report on the floor? Moved by Councillor Wang, seconded by Councillor Spadafora. Is there any discussion on this? Councillor Wang?
Thank you. Through you, Chair, just as the recommendation is to continue working with the Toronto Centralized Municipal Processing Center, what are the follow-on steps will we have a feasibility analysis on bringing that in-house to Hamilton at all, or is that always going to be separate and always going to be in Toronto?
Through the chair, Mike Field, Manager of Transportation Operations. If we don't sign up with the agreement, the automated speed enforcement program, red light camera program, are come to an end in the city. The Toronto Centralized Municipal Processing Center is the party that reviews all of the infractions, validates them, and then sends them on to the court system. The provincial government in 2022 did put a regulation forward where it allows municipalities to administer the tickets themselves. And some municipalities have looked at bringing the processing in-house. However, right now we're more focusing on transitioning the administration of the tickets over to the APS system in the same way that we do parking tickets. And we haven't spent much time on bringing in the processing center, but it's possible in the future, as we review these programs and expand on them, that we may explore those things later.
So as follow-up then, through you, Chair, what would later look like?
Through the chair, later would look like, I think, one of the holdbacks that we've had with expanding the automated speed enforcement program, which appreciating a lot of councillors would like us to do, and a lot of residents would like us to do as well. That's where our focus would be expanding the program. And then once we have, the program running well, and then we can look at enhancing it by perhaps bringing that centralized processing center in-house. But right now, the City of Toronto does a really good job on behalf of member municipalities, and there's many of them doing the processing on behalf of all of the member municipalities.
Sorry, as my last question then, I'd like to really understand when we would actually do this type of feedback, because I think there's real opportunity for us bringing it in-house. But I would like to get a sense, do you need direction at some point to have some sort of a deadline or some sort of a feedback? And if that's the case, I can take it offline. I just wanted to get a better sense from you of what type of direction you might need in order for us to identify what is that feedback and when would we do that kind of analysis?
Through the chair, we have a report coming to Public Works Committee in Q3 or Q4 of this year to go over transitioning to the administrative penalty process. And within that report, we'll touch on all aspects of the program, including the processing of offenses. So that would be maybe the best time to explore those conversations at that point.
Excellent, thank you.
Great, not seeing any further speakers. It's been moved and seconded. We will have the electronic vote. The vote is up. And that carries 11-0. Moving on to motions. 10.1 Maplewood Park, 150 Second Road West, Stony Creek. Councillor Beattie, would you like to introduce your motion? Your seconder, please.
Certainly, Vice Chair Francis, it's moved by myself and seconded by yourself on behalf of our Stony Creek colleague from Ward 9, Brad Clark. Brief synopsis, Maplewood Park is a community park of 7 hectares in size located at 150 Second Road West. I'll skip right to the therefore be it resolved. That's the important part, that the design and construction of a multi-use court at Maplewood Park, 150 Second Road West of Stony Creek be funded from the GFL Stony Creek Compensation Royalties Reserve 117036 at an upset limit including contingency not to exceed $200,000 be approved, and that the General Manager of Public Works or designate be authorized and directed to approve and execute all required ancillary agreements and documents with such terms and conditions that form a satisfaction to the city solicitor related to the design and development for the multi-use court at Maplewood Park. Seeing that we have done this a few times using the GFL Royalty Reserve, and always happy to see that money being reinvested back into the community. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Beattie. Not seeing any speakers to this, so we will take that electronic vote at this time. The vote is up. And that carries 10-0, slowly dwindling away here. 10.2, Mount Hope Park improvements, 3027 Homestead Drive, Hamilton, Ward 11. Councillor Tadison, would you like to introduce your motion, and do you have a seconder?
I do, thank you. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Beattie. Mount Hope Park improvements at Homestead Drive in Hamilton, whereas the ball diamond at Mount Hope Park would benefit from improvements to support active community baseball program, whereas improvements such as additional sport fencing would improve the player experience and the safety of users and spectators, and whereas recreational park amenities support valuable opportunities for children, youth, and families to be active and play within the Ward 11 neighborhoods. Therefore, be it resolved that the improvements of Mount Hope Park on Homestead Drive, including the baseball diamond fencing, would be funded from the Ward 11 non-property tax revenue account at $65,000 and Ward 11 airport revenue account at $30,000 at an upset limit including contingency not to exceed $95,000 be approved, and that the general manager, Public Works, or designate be authorized and directed to approve and execute any and all required agreements and ancillary documents with such terms and conditions in a form satisfactory to the city solicitor related to the improvement at Mount Hope Park on Homestead Drive. So basically, we're looking for another baseball diamond that's functional. It used to be a men's baseball diamond. We had big improvements to the whole park, but we lost the ability to have the men's leagues play there because the field was shortened. So we're going to make it for under 11, women's fastball, women's slow pitch. It's going to be, we're going to revitalize this park and get people coming out to it to use it again. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Taddison. Not seeing any speakers to this, so we'll take the vote at this time. Vote is up. And that carries 10-0. 10.3 Macassa Park Improvements, 701 Upper Sherman Avenue, Ward 7. This was Councillor Paul's motion, but I understand that Councillor Spatafora will be moving this, or sorry, Councillor Jackson will be moving this.
Thank you, Vice Chair Francis. On behalf of the hardworking Ward 7 Councillor Pauls, moved by myself, seconded by Ward 14 Councillor Mike Spatafora, whereas Macassa Park, 701 Upper Sherman Avenue is highly programmed park with recreational assets to support Ward 7 residents and beyond. Whereas with support from the Ward 7 Councillor and area rated funds, significant capital improvements have rejuvenated this space with park pathway and play structure replacements, whereas the existing parking area would also benefit with resurfacing as it has deteriorated due to age and use, and whereas finally this resurfacing would improve public health and safety as well as operational maintenance. Therefore be it resolved A, the improvements at Macassa Park, including the resurfacing of the existing parking area, be funded from the Ward 7 Capital Reinvestment Reserve number noted at an upset limit, including contingency not to exceed $200,000 be approved. B, that General Manager Carlisle can or his designate be authorized and directed to approve, execute any and all required agreements and ancillary documents with such terms, conditions satisfactory to the city solicitor Shields related to these improvements at Macassa Park, Hamilton. Vice Chair Francis, I used to look after this park for a number of years before realignment of the boundaries, and I can tell you the parking lot there, very well used, is in much need of this improvement, and I commend Councillor Pauls for asking me to bring it forward. Thank you, Vice Chair Francis.
Thanks, Councillor Jackson, for moving that. Not seeing any speakers to this, so we'll take that electronic vote. Vote is up. And that's carried 10-0. 10.4, basketball court investment at St. Christopher's Park in Ward 4. Councillor Wang, would you like to introduce your motion and your seconder, please?
Thank you, Chair. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Taddison, and it is a basketball reinvestment of St. Christopher's Park in Ward 4. It's located, St. Christopher's Park is located at 119 McNulty Boulevard. And there is already an existing court there, but it's the refresh, adding fencing and painting and that sort of thing. So therefore be it resolved that an additional basketball net and fencing installation around the court at St. Christopher Park at 119 McNulty Boulevard, Hamilton, be funded from the Ward 4 Capital Reinvestment Reserve 108054 at an upset limit, including contingency not to exceed $30,000 be approved, and that B, that the General Manager of Public Works or designate be authorized and directed to approve and execute any and all required agreements and ancillary documents with such terms and conditions in a form satisfactory to the city solicitor. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Wang. Not seeing any speakers to this, so at this time we'll take the electronic vote. Vote is up. That carries 10-0. We're on to notices of motion. Councillor Spatafora, please introduce your notice of motion, and will you be seeking to suspend the rules?
Thank you, Vice Chair. I will be seeking to suspend the rules as this motion is time sensitive. It's moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Jackson to suspend the rules of order to allow introduction of motion respecting deferral of capital project 11270 Scenic Drive Phase 2. We good?
Good. The vote is up to suspend the rules. Councillor McMeekin's a thumbs up. And the vote to suspend the rules carries 10-0. Go ahead, Councillor Spatafor, introduce your motion.
Again, it's moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Jackson to defer the capital project number 11270 Scenic Drive Phase 2. Whereas public engagement, accountability, transparency, and community input are essential principles in the planning and implementation of capital projects to ensure that meet the needs and priorities of residents. Whereas Ward 14 Councillor Mike Spatafor has emphasized the importance of these principles for capital projects within Ward 14, including capital project number 1270 Scenic Drive Phase 2. Whereas community consultation has raised concerns and questions regarding the safety, functionality, practicality, and the cost of the proposed 700-meter road reconstruction, which includes sidewalk connection on the south side, multi-use path on the north side, streetscape improvements, water distribution system replacement, speed cushions, and maintenance of the 40-kilometer speed limit. And whereas there's significant interest from the residents to establish a citizens committee to further review the design and scope of Phase 2, therefore be it resolved that the capital project Scenic Drive Phase 2 be deferred to the 2026 capital budget to allow additional time for community engagement and review, that staff be directed to facilitate the formation. It's going to, that should not read that, sorry. That won't be staff to direct the formation of the Citizens Committee. That'll be directed through my office. With representation from relevant stakeholders to review and provide input on the scope and design of Phase 2, and staff be authorized to increase the purchase order CR 00131 to RJ Burnside and Associates Limited by an amount of $25,000 to increase their scope of work to prepare for and facilitate additional public meetings, to be funded by the 2025 budget project ID 40320191108 based on the deferral of the planned construction work. I'll speak to it briefly just to give committee members an understanding of what's happening. Scenic Drive is, I believe, 4 full phases. Phase 1 is completed. This is obviously Phase 2, as I said. I've had many residents that have brought specific concerns to Phase 2, but I've also received some concerns from residents in regards to Phase 1. First thing I'll be clear is this has nothing to do with the lack of engagement from staff. Staff has done all the work they're supposed to with public meetings and engaging with residents, showing the proposed work, the renderings, all the things that we expect our staff to do, they've done, and they've done it well. Phase 1 was a project that was, I would say, that lacked engagement probably from a political standpoint. I won't get into why, but that phase obviously was done prior to me being in office because it was constructed about a year and a half ago. So that consultation would have happened prior to my term of council. So there has been some concerns raised about how that process went, again, not from a staff standpoint. So I want to ensure that this project gets the same attention that I would say the East Mountain Brow project got. I think a citizens committee that was done by Councillor Jackson through his project was a phenomenal way to ensure that everybody around the neighborhood has the ability to come forward and talk about the project. And I didn't feel at this time we have one meeting left before going to tender, which tender would be happening relatively soon in the next month or so. So hoping to defer and allow residents to have a better understanding and input into the project because it is a major project in Ward 14. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Spatafor. Not seeing any speakers to this at this time, so we'll take that electronic vote. Oh, Councillor Wang.
I appreciate that. I just want to understand, I guess the timeline. So you're deferring this to the budget. So then the budget would make that decision as to yay or nay, it's going to go forward. And then from there, that's when we would restart the tendering process. Is that how that timeline would work?
I'll let staff confirm, but that's my understanding. It would go through the 2026 budget, and then we haven't tendered it now.
Okay.
It hasn't been tendered yet. We were about to go into the tendering process once our final public meeting was to happen. So my understanding is budget. If it gets approved through the budget, then staff would go through the same tendering process that they would have this year. But I'll let Director Kennedy, I think, to answer that.
Thank you. So it has already been approved through the budget. So this is a deferral that would move the I guess, move the money from 2025 that was approved for the construction to 2026.
Oh, okay, thank you. That makes a lot more sense to me, because I was wondering, I was like, I thought we've already approved it. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks, Councillor Wang. Any further speakers here? Not seeing any. We'll take that electronic vote now. Vote is up. And that carries 10-0. 11.2, Councillor Nam, please introduce your notice of motion, and will you be seeking to suspend the rules?
Yes, I will be. Thank you, Vice Chair. And it's moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Huang that the rules of order be suspended to allow for the introduction of a motion respecting sidewalks adjacent to North Central Park expansion.
Perfect. We'll have that electronic vote, and it is now up. Councillor Meekin is a thumbs up. Vote to suspend the rules carries 10-0. Councillor Nan, please introduce your motion and your seconder, please.
Thank you. Again, it's moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Huang. And this is for those of you who may have, I think maybe Councillor Jackson may be the only one around the table that might remember the history on this one. But when the Studebaker factory lands were sold, part of a municipal opportunity here was to have the lands adjacent to North Central Park be given back to the city in expanding that park, while the remainder of the asset of land went to its private development. And so whereas North Central Community Park is currently being expanded to include lands to the west along the north side of Mars Avenue, and whereas there's currently no sidewalk along the north side of Mars Avenue from Wentworth Street North to just west of Douglas Avenue. And whereas the expansion of the park will see more children, families, residents seeking to access the expanded open green space and to walk uninterrupted along the north side of Mars Avenue. And whereas there's already a sidewalk on the north side of Mars Avenue just west of Douglas Avenue to Emerald Street North. And whereas the need for a safe and accessible path along the north side of the street would be in alignment with the city's Vision Zero policy and complete street guidelines, therefore be it resolved that A, Transportation Division investigate the feasibility of installing a sidewalk along the north side of Mars Avenue from Wentworth Street North to the existing sidewalk west of Douglas Avenue that connects Emerald Street North. B, that the sidewalk feasibility review be coordinated with Environmental Services Division to mitigate potential tree removals and complement the planned North Central Community Park expansion. And C, that the sidewalk feasibility review be completed by Q3 this year with the results provided to the Ward 3 office, including potential implementation plan as well as associated costs. If I may, Vice Chair, real appreciation to Director Royale and the team in Public Works in working with my office in getting this initiated. So when that land was transferred to the municipality, there was no mechanism put in place to review the expansion of that parkland and its how it interacts with the adjacent community in the Keith neighborhood. And to put in an expanded parkland without the adjacent sidewalks makes not for complete communities. So in an effort to try and expedite this to make sure that people can get there safely, implementation for the expansion is underway already. We're anticipating that expanded green space to be available for the community sooner than later. I'd like to be able to correspond that with a sidewalk. So there you go. Moved and seconded.
Thanks, Councillor Nan. Any speakers to this? Seeing none, so we will take that electronic vote. Vote is up. And that carries 10-0. Are there any other notices of motion? Seeing none, being no further business, the meeting's adjourned. Thank you. At 4:22.